Alright, we are back, not with gameplay today, but instead you see this beautiful tier list I've created with images. And today we are going to be ranking every single boss in the Masters Challenge mod by difficulty, from easiest to hardest, in the order that you fight them in the game. Of course, some of them you can choose your own order, like with the crazy Aeons, but I roughly have an order in mind. We'll kind of just do it in the order that I arranged the pictures here. I think this is like probably how most people would do it roughly, except like Geoscano and Crazy Ochu, but yeah, oh, by the way, if you're still wondering about my own playthrough, yeah, well, I'm still on the Seraphite, okay? Give me some time. It's really difficult without customization. I don't know if it's even possible. I'm not like grinding this 8 hours a day, so this will probably take some time, okay? I'll let you know once I've either beaten it or given up or whatever, okay? Maybe I'll also make a status report at some point if I make some progress, okay? Basically, it's just really, really hard. Okay, just give me some time. I'll let you know when the time comes. For now, let's just do this tier list here. I thought this would be a fun little idea while I'm still struggling against the Seraphite. So let's start with the first boss, Sinspawn Gui, which I actually didn't even have in my playthrough because it's part of the Zanarkand section. That's just a bunch of cutscenes, and I didn't want to show that. Obviously, you can't actually lose in this fight because he only uses demi attack, so of course this is the easiest boss in the game. I guess that is along with Yu Yevon, who is also, I guess, the easiest boss in the game because you can't lose against him, as well as Geoscano in his first appearance. However, it's actually not ranked Geoscano yet because, well, yeah, I should have put this like back here. It'll just rank the second fight because it's like there's no point. Yeah, I mean, I could put it here, you know it, right? So next up we have Click, which is this guy over here. When it comes to Click, I mean, it's a very simple fight. You just have to do the math that you have to defend once, right? If you just keep attacking unless you crit, I believe you will lose the fight because you're gonna need one more attack than you'd get that way. And yeah, the way you would get that one more attack is if you look at your HP, if you know, guard his last attack against you, or just any attack really, you'll get one more hit out of the fight. And so, yeah, that's gonna be enough to kill Click. So let's put him in E tier. It's definitely not as easy as a literally unlosable fight. Oh yeah, also, I guess he has a second phase where Riku is in the fight, but again, then you have Riku and you can throw the Antarctic winds and stuff. It's not very difficult, really. So, moving on to Tross. Tross is definitely more of a challenge than Click, but I mean, you don't need any strategy for Tross. Like, he just deals some damage and then you just heal off his damage. It's very simple. I think we can put this guy in E tier as well. There's absolutely no strategy or anything needed for this fight. Next up is Kimari. I guess kind of a similar thing. He just deals damage and then you heal it. It's just a matter. I mean, like there are optimizations to be made in the fight. You don't want to use all your healing items against Kimari, ideally, I guess. So your overdrive node matters for this one. For instance, you want to be on loner, for example. I think maybe sufferer is also okay because that will charge your overdrive faster, and then you can win the fight sooner and use less healing items. Yeah, and so I guess just because there are those optimizations you'd want to make, I would rank Kimari as being harder than Tross, because for Tross there really isn't much to think about. I mean, he has that one charge attack, sure, okay, he can defend against that, whatever. But with Kimari, yeah, I mean, you have to think about your overdrive mode at least, put it to loner, and then I guess like guarding is somewhat useful, and then you gotta deal with the darkness he can apply to you. Yeah, I would say Kimari is definitely a little bit harder than Trust. Although I feel like E is still too high. You know, let's put all these guys in F tier. It's still very easy. Next up is Sin, the SS Leaky fight. About this one, I would say it's still extremely easy. I think the strategy, like the only thing resembling a real strategy is just like you have to simply stack cheers until you can simply one-shot the Sin Scales or at least easily kill them. You just have to like not go all out and just kill them for no reason. You just have to wait until they use the flicker and cheer and then you kill them. And then in between you can of course deal damage to the boss itself. That's really not difficult at all. Let's put this one in E tier. Like, at least it's still, you know, you have to do something other than just attack and then heal if you take damage. So let's put this one in E here. Next up, we have got Sinspawn Gui. I guess this one is kind of similar. The strategy here is to just stack cheers, and then Waka will only have so much MP for the dark attacks. I think he can use 2 at this point. So yeah, he heals himself from his drain touch, so you basically want to stack all the cheers until you're ready to burst them down in those 6 turns of darkness you've got, and then you just use the dark attack, and then you kill him. Actually, you probably don't even have to do that, actually. I'm pretty sure you could even just out-damage him with enough cheers, because Titus it's just for a decent number of damage here. But it's still easier than this one, because again, I don't even see what could go wrong in the Sin fight on the SS Fleeky. Like, it's so hard. Like, even if you make a mistake, it literally just doesn't even matter. Like, worst case, oh no, you're like one of your characters is gonna die and you have to use a Phoenix Stone. Okay, it's not bad at all. It's completely fine, really. Okay, next up we have got this guy. I don't know how to pronounce his name. Is it Genio or something? I don't know. I don't speak French. Okay, it sounds French to me. I don't even know if this is French. Um, yeah, I mean, it's another fight where you don't need any kind of complex strategy at all. I think maybe you could be tempted to just keep like curing or sorry, Asunaing off the poison, which I think would be a mistake because he just applies it so frequently. There's really no point in doing that. I feel like you should just ignore the poison and simply heal people when they're about to die because he doesn't deal any damage. You just kill the tentacles and then you break the shell with fire and then you kill the boss. That's pretty much it. I guess the one little thing that could be a bit of a skill expression is knowing when to silence him, because he has one like Watera attack, I believe. He has a 3 turns, like a 3 move cycle where he uses a poison attack and then Watera and then Thrash or whatever that thing with the tentacles, right? Out of those, only the water would actually deal any damage. So if you also know, like, if you figure out the pattern in his attacks and you know to silence him for that turn, that makes it just even more trivial. Like, he does literally nothing that deals damage to you. So yeah, this fight is super easy as well. I think it's definitely quite a bit higher than these two. Should I make like an E plus tier? I think not. It's fine, we'll just do it like this. I can just mention it, I think there's a little bit of a gap between these two and this one, because at least you can get baited to do something stupid, which is trying to get rid of the poison all the time, but yeah, I don't think that's really, making it much more difficult than something that would belong in E tier. Next up, we have got the Obliterator. Let's put him in the to be determined tier. This fight is just all about buffing up before using the crane. I think the crane, like, I'm pretty sure it can never kill him. It just leaves him at a certain HP threshold or something, so you're gonna have to deal with the last bits of his HP yourself, no matter what. So, yeah, what you could do wrong is just immediately use the crane, and then you might lose to him once he enters the second phase and Mighty Guards himself. Yeah, so then he's gonna have Shell and Protect, and then I guess it's just harder to deal with because he counters. He has pretty strong counters if you attack him, so you want to attack him as a few times as possible. And for that, of course, yeah, you'll want to use the crane once you've set up all your buffs so that the counters basically are less bad for you. You take less damage. They still apply statuses, but it's just not difficult to deal with. Once you steal that Mighty Guard, or I guess learn the Mighty Guard with Kimari and apply it to yourself, it's just trivial at that point. His attacks don't deal enough damage to threaten you anymore, and then if someone gets hit by a status, it's really not so bad. You probably also want to have haste on, I guess, Lulu probably. Lulu would probably deal the most damage to the Obliterator because you can use Thunder. Being a Machina, of course, Titus's weapon would get broken, I guess, if you want to say it like that. I mean, what it does is just apply Power Break to a character that hits the Machina, right? So I guess Titus probably would deal less damage than Lulu, so yeah. Where do we want to rank this? I think it's like this is the first fight where I feel like you can actually lose if you don't know what you're doing. Maybe if you're just not ready for the counters, if you're not ready for his second phase where he's just gonna tank too much stuff and then you run out of healing items, maybe, I don't know. I feel like this is like the very top of E tier. I don't want to rank anything in E anymore. I feel like if it's even a little bit more difficult than this, it already deserves a different tier. Maybe we can even put this in super low D tier. No, but it's still so easy. Like, you just have to use Mighty Guard. I mean, the scan text literally even tells you that it has Mighty Guard, so it's really not hard at all. Yeah, I think this is a good placement. It's top of E tier. Next up, we have the Chocobo Eater. The Chocobo Eater, I think I would consider the Chocobo Eater to be the very first non-trivial boss fight in this mod. The fight pretty much just revolves around keeping his enormous damage potential in check via Darkness, Silence, Null Frost, or Power Break, or a combination of those ideally. You will pretty much always want him power broken, because if he ever does hit you through Darkness, for instance, it's going to be bad if he's not power broken, but yeah, if you just power break him, that's totally fine. The problem with that, of course, is he uses White Wind whenever you deal 2400 damage to push him down, and then another 1000 to push him back. Once he gets back up, he's gonna use White Wind, so you have to keep power breaking and stuff. So I guess if you think about it like that, it's just an MP management fight, right? Because as long as you just keep giving him Darkness and Power Break, as well as either Silence or Null Frost, he's pretty much completely harmless. The problem is just you'll run out of MP at some point. What's also important here is he has White Wind, so if you want to use Lancet here with Kimari to learn White Wind from him, which is of course somewhat useful already as an overdrive, but more importantly it fills his overdrive immediately, right? You can use Seed Cannon on this guy, which can be extremely potent because it confuses him, obviously, and he deals a lot of damage to himself, but also it gives him poison. You can't apply poison through other means at this point, except also Waka's Limit Break, or Overdrive, I mean, sorry. So, point being only overdrives. Also, an interaction there that's very interesting, of course, is you can give him Dark before the Seed Cannon, so he's gonna try to attack himself and miss a bunch of times, so that basically just like skips a bunch of his turns until the darkness runs out. Um, if it weren't for that, I would say it's a little bit more difficult because for the final phase, like when he's one step away from being pushed all the way down and ending the fight, he's gonna use a haste on himself. Or I guess more thematically, Chocobo Feather, which does the same thing, of course. So he's gonna do that. Then it's actually kind of becomes a little bit difficult to keep him in check once he says it, but yeah, if you just do the seed cannon thing, that's gonna take care of itself, of course. And you'll have one in no time. I guess the mistakes you could make here are that you could just use Waka's Dark Attack too much, but Waka is the only one who has Silence Attack, so you'll probably want to save his MP as much as possible and use as many Dark Attacks with Kimari as possible, because he can also lance it, remember, to regen his MP. Yeah, of course it's not E tier. It's definitely not an E tier fight. I don't know if I want to put it in D or C. Let's do D for now, because we don't have a point of reference here all that much. Let's just say this is D. It's quite a bit harder than all the E tier fights, that's for sure. However, it's also not like that much harder. I don't think I want to put it 2 tiers above. Yeah, so let's do this, and then we can adjust, of course, dynamically as we go. Okay, so next up we have got Sinspawn Gui. The deal with this fight is, yeah, first of all, I think this is like the first boss I would consider to actually be a little bit difficult. It's not very hard, of course, but like it's a pretty big power spike, I feel like, from Chocobo Eater and all the previous bosses. The thing with this boss is you can deal very overwhelming damage if a player doesn't know what they're doing. However, it's still easy enough to survive once you figure out how the head behaves, because that's the biggest problem. Obviously, you need to have the body power broken, for which you would have to find out that, like, the other parts, or the arms rather, that they actually use the strength stat of the body, because they actually just make the body perform the attack when they get the turn. However, the scan text does tell you that if you scan the enemy, so yeah, I guess it's not really that difficult to figure out. So it's not really much of a knowledge check, right? I would assume you would just, if it's your first time playing, you're just gonna scan the bosses, right? So you'd be told that anyway, especially given that at the start scanning doesn't even end an attempt really. Later on, if you scan a boss, if you start with a scan, usually you'll just lose, and then it's like you basically discard an attempt to get the scan information. But yeah, here that's not even true, so why wouldn't you scan bosses, I guess, right? The head is also very tanky, needing either really MP intensive turns or overdrives to kill. The best thing you can do is probably apply full break with either Orin or Waka's overdrives. For that, of course, you need to manage the toxin, which applies curse. It's very essential to isolate that effect to just one person in that fight. Ideally, someone with poison proof. Kimari will get a poison proof armor. like right before the boss fight. However, if you took too many HP nodes with Kimari, his HP is probably gonna be too high to actually get targeted with the toxin reliably. Personally, I prefer Titus to have poison proof, but of course the only other source of poison proof at this point in time is that you would have to farm the Sinspawn Gui or whatever, this guy can drop poison proof for a random character, and yeah, so if you get it for Titus, it's probably lucky. If not, then yeah, maybe you'll use Kimari, and if not, then I guess you'll just have to deal with the poison effect of the toxin, which is fine, not the end of the world. Also, something I actually only recently found out is you can apparently kill one of the arms without them regenerating. I thought it was like Penance or Seraph rather, where like the arms just regenerate no matter if it's one or two that are dead, but yeah, apparently he only regenerates them after both arms die, actually. So yeah, that also actually makes it way more manageable than I first thought, but yeah. So once you have the body power broken and you find out how the head behaves, it's really just not difficult at all, I feel like, to survive. Just need to know when the fire is coming on either silence or null blaze, and the same for the water ga, the toxin. Of course, you want to isolate it to one character, as I just said. It just doesn't deal that much damage, so it's okay. Just have one character, ideally on the side with the dead arm. If you're gonna kill off one of the arms and then leave the other alive, just put the character that you want to get targeted with the toxin on the side without the arm, so they don't have to take so much damage. That makes it very easy to just keep someone low HP to just continuously tank the toxin over and over again, and then of course its fourth turn is basically just wasted because you want to be dealing damage to the head anyway first, I feel like, so I'm going to be attacking it no matter what, and then basically just wastes a turn and is like, hey, here you go, attack me, or I will kill you, but yeah, okay, I wanted to attack you anyway, right? So how difficult is this fight? I don't know. It's not very difficult. It's just like once you realize the head has a very strict pattern that it follows, which also is in the scan text. You'll just pay attention, right, to when the head does what, and then once you figure that out, it's really not difficult. It's just power break the body, and then it doesn't really deal any damage, and the head should never deal any damage except the minuscule damage that toxin deals, and if you don't have poison proof, I guess there's also that, but yeah. I don't know, I have a hard time ranking this. Is it like one full tier harder than the Chocobo Eater? Maybe. It's hard to say. Um, like these are, I mean, this is definitely quite a bit harder, I think, than Chocobo Eater. Shall we do C tier first? Maybe if this doesn't differentiate enough, I'll go back and change this. But for now, let's just move on to the extractor. This is another pretty easy one, I think. It's probably easier than both of these. Yeah, I mean, on this fight, you pretty much just have to figure out like a set choreography. It's just always doing the exact same things in the exact same order. It's not like a fight where you have to think actively on every turn. You just have to figure out once what you have to do, and then you just repeat it until you win. In my experience, I guess it's best to not use Waka's Lightning Strike, first of all, because Alchemy is actually very useful, because, you have to hit your characters to wake them up, so it's cool to have Alchemy to be able to heal them more efficiently, and then also, because he has Null Shock, Waka can't hit it like that, because you'll have to get rid of the Null Shock otherwise, which wastes a turn. It's not very comfortable. I prefer to just use the Alchemy weapon and hit normally with Waka. Yeah, and then pretty much you just have to like set up cheers, right? Of course, there's the aspect that you have to do some turn manipulation as well. You don't want to use like any slow rank 3 moves, or even worse, I think you don't even have any higher rank moves, right? I mean, I guess your overdress, yeah. You don't want to not do that before it goes up, right? When it goes up, it's gonna drop the bombs and they deal a ton of damage unless you deal a certain amount of damage to it, and so you want to get as many turns in that time frame that you have to deal that damage as possible, so you just want to like switch your weapon or use cheer or something like that before that happens, and then yeah, the first time you won't be power broken. You won't have cheers, of course, or not that many at least, but you also won't be power broken because it's a machina, so it will power break you for the subsequent turns, I guess, you have to attack it. But then you'll have the cheer to mitigate that, so it's okay, really. I would say this is pretty easy. I think it's E tier. Is it harder? Yeah, I think it's hard. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's harder than the Blitz Raider. It's hard to say. I think these are pretty much the same difficulty. Let's say these are tied. Next up, Spheromorph. The problem with Spheromorph's difficulty is that he's kind of completely harmless in his first phase, at least if you don't attack it. Its counters do deal some damage, of course, but if you don't attack it, it's just going to use those spells that hit each party member once, and because it's just so predictable, like it does nothing else except just cycle through those spells, it makes him really totally harmless if you just focus on your defenses, right? You can put Yuna in, you can haste her, and you can just have all the nulls set up within 2 turns of the boss, and yeah, basically you can just stall him out forever, because I mean it costs 1 MP, and you can put Rook on everyone, you can charge everyone's overdrives, you can set up all the buffs you need, before sending him into his second phase, which is when he would actually start becoming somewhat dangerous. However, with this much momentum, if you actually take your time to build it in the first phase where he does nothing at all, yeah, it's going to be hard for it to do anything really before just dying. If you have all your overdrives when it hits 10,000 HP out of its 20,000, which is when it phase transitions, then you can just like put all your overdrives on him and it's basically just going to die. For example, Seed Cannon can just totally trivialize this fight again. When it gets targeted by a special move in its second phase, however, it will cycle through one of two counters, one of which is a Suna. So yeah, that can get rid of the poison and stuff. However, this guy does take like a ton of damage from poison. The problem is he cycles through that, so it's not consistent that he's going to do Asuna. His element change, by the way, is also a special move targeting himself, so he's going to automatically proc the Asuna if you use it in phase 1. Once he gets into phase 2, if he targets himself with that, he will automatically proc his own Asuna, so you can't just apply that in phase 1 and then just guard until it dies. However, you can just apply it a second time. Like you can do it once, and then it's gonna Asuna once it hits phase 2, and then you just entrust to Kimari again, and then you use another seed cannon, right? And then it's not gonna have Asuna for that one anymore. So the next time it counters with something else, I don't even know what the other counter is anymore, but it's not Asuna. And then after that, it's gonna use Asuna again the next time it uses elemental change on itself. However, it won't do that on that turn because it's confused, so it's just gonna hit itself, right? So yeah, that just deals so much damage, and from that point onwards, like just one overdrive with Yuna, like just I don't know, some Aeon you summon will just kill it off pretty much. Yeah, not difficult at all, I would say, simply because the boss just lets you fight at your own pace, and that's never a good thing. However, I would say it's harder than these for sure. It's easier than Chocobo Eater, though. I think it's at like the low D tier here. Next up, Crawler and Negator. So this fight kind of has a highly dynamic difficulty, I would say, based on how many consumable buffs you're willing to use, because you can't use spells until the Negator is down. So you can't set up haste or protect or shell or any of that, but your Riku can do it with her curtains and stuff. So if you're willing to use a lot of those, that's going to make this fight extremely easy, of course, especially if you just protect everyone, then it's not going to deal any significant damage at all. However, if you don't want to do that, it can deal very high damage against the party members that aren't protected. So, but however, it's really not even that much. Like you can still out heal it even without having protect on your party members. Um, but in any case, I would say it's just not a very difficult fight because, again, it doesn't require any complex strategy or planning beyond simply out healing his damage, right? Yes, he does deal a lot of damage, but as I said, you can out heal it, and it pretty much just comes down to do you want to use more healing items but preserve your curtains, or do you just want to use less healing items and have a more comfortable fight, but then you like have to use your curtains, of which you have a very limited supply. Uh, in either case, it's just not difficult. You don't have to do any complicated thinking. You just like attack the negator and then you wait until the negator dies. Meanwhile, the crawler is gonna keep attacking you, and then you just out heal the damage, right? Once the negator dies, you can pretty easily kill off the crawler, by the way, before it even uses its magic beam, because you can simply full break it with an overdrive before that even happens. Like, this guy deals a lot of damage, so if you have Comrade or something, it charges relatively quickly. So if you have Orin's Overdrive, for example, you can full break the Crawler, or I'm not sure if Waka can also do it, or if it would only target the Negator, but Orin can definitely do it. So yeah, it's got kind of a lot of HP. You wouldn't think you can kill it so easily, but it actually works pretty easily. You just have to be aware of its counter. I think it's got a 50% chance of countering. And yeah, I mean, once it's broken, it's just not much of a threat anyway. I don't really. I think this is another D tier again. It's again these E tier ones are so easy. It's like literally just difficult to lose against them. Except this one. I mean, for that one, you can lose the extractor. You can definitely lose against the extractor, but it's just a really short fight. And then once you figured out what to do, it's super easy. So yeah, it's not like much of a problem at all. The question is this harder than Spheromorph or not? I think not. I think this is actually easier than Spheromorph. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, or maybe not. I don't know. These are also like kind of the same. I feel like the counter that you have to deal with, maybe once you actually start attacking the crawler, might make it a bit more difficult than Spheromorph. So let's go with that. We'll put it between Chocobo Eater and Spheromorph. Next, we have this image of Anima here, representing the Seymour and Anima fight. This fight, I think when you have poison proof on Titus, that makes the fight very easy because when you provoke the Water Guardians, they just throw remedies at the provoker, and Titus, of course, is the only one who has provoke at this point. So if Titus has poison proof, they just inflict dark and silence, I believe, which just doesn't do anything really. So basically, you can just immediately take them out of commission with Titus. It makes this fight pretty easy, I would say, because then you only have to worry about Seymour. So of course, granted, Titus also won't be able to, use spells or attack anyone pretty much, but that's like okay. It's kind of like with Seymour, it's like with most Seymour fights where he can deal a lot of damage. His damage can feel very overwhelming at first, but there's this gimmick where this kind of works on most Seymours, right? Where you can threaten and then one turn of silence also works before you use a silence proofify, and that's just usually more than enough time to set up all the buffs and debuffs you need to actually start tanking his spells, and yeah, he doesn't really deal that much damage anymore once you've got Shell and then he's magic broken, it's just fine. You can also use the nulls that Yuna has, it's really not difficult. Also, if Seymour is magic broken and Titus has Shell and at least one stack of focus, he can actually just tank everything himself too. So then you can also provoke Seymour, and then even if every hit hits Titus, which is guaranteed to happen if you provoke, he will just survive. At 5 stacks of focus, you will even survive comfortably enough that if you haste Yuna and use the talk command with her, which will give her 5 more agility, which you should do anyway, she can actually pretty much just out-heal his damage with just using praise, so you barely even have to use any items or MP, if at all. So, yeah, that's that for the first phase. It's really not very difficult. If you don't have poison proof on Titus, I would probably still provoke the guards just to stop them from giving Seymour beneficial effects, right? I guess like yeah, no, I don't think the poison is any problem. Like you can even if you just spend every turn that Titus has just using an antidote on himself to basically do the same thing as having poison proof, it's fine. It's literally just completely fine, I think. And so yeah, I guess maybe you wouldn't want to provoke Seymour then, but maybe you would. I don't know. If you, even if you don't, it's fine. It's maybe even easier if you don't provoke him. If you don't provoke him, then yeah, like there's a chance, I guess, that all of his spells will just go on one person, and especially if they don't have Shell, which does cost quite a bit of MP at this point in time. But do you even have Shell for this fight? I think you do, right? Yeah, no, yeah, you have to have it, right? Whatever. I mean, worst case, Riku definitely has Lunar Curtains. Um, yeah, I mean, even if they don't have Shell and everything, it's one person, they can die, I guess. But I think he only uses Tetris spells at this point in time. So if you also know his cycle, which is I think ice, then lightning, and then water, and then fire, and then so on, you can just use the appropriate nulls and at least make it very, very unlikely that someone's gonna die, even if you don't have this optimal poison-proof thing with Titus going on. However, if you don't, you can also just customize the poison-proof armor. I don't know how many antidotes that costs anymore. Was it 30 or something? It's not very expensive, and you already have customization at this point, so yeah. When it comes to the other phases, there is a major difficulty decreasing factor, which is that you obviously keep all your buffs and everything that you have from the first phase for the second one, and the problem is once the first phase is under your control, you can just infinitely stall them out to get all the buffs and overdrives that you want, and so you can just steamroll the entire rest of the fight with that momentum again. It's kind of like with Spheromorph. With Anima, there's really just exactly one thing that can go wrong here, which is being on slow characters with high turn delay when he has the turn where he uses two pains. If he does that and then like the one surviving character just doesn't get a turn before his next one, it can be really difficult to recover. But if you just pay attention to being on relatively fast characters and that happens, it's really completely fine, I think. You just want to make sure that Yuna is out, right? You need to just make sure you have low turn delay on all of the three characters that could potentially survive on the turn where he's going to use his pain, and then you just switch out whoever survives with Yuna, who should have haste and the +5 agility, so she can basically just come in for the survivor and revive everyone else really quickly, and then that's just going to destroy Anima so fast it's not even worth talking about. That's literally the only thing that's a problem there. I don't even want to talk about his overdrive, because if you do it even half right, there's no shot he's gonna get anywhere near getting his overdrive before dying, or she, I guess. Anima is female, right? Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, no wait, there's also phase 3, of course. Yeah, I almost forgot. So the overdrives from phase 1, right, you wouldn't really use them on Anima. I don't think they're that useful, but in phase 3 you can just use them to immediately burst them down and just skip it. Like for me, I just used Banishing Blade and then Hellfire with Ifrit. So I basically just killed Seymour in phase 3 with just those two turns before he even got to do anything at all. So yeah, that's kind of the problem with having too much momentum from the first phase. Just allows you to steamroll the other two phases basically if you know what you're doing. However, I think a lot of people also struggle with this fight because they kind of don't know what they're doing. But I can't really rank it so high. It's just not difficult. Like, no matter how you think about it, yes, there are some pitfalls and some mistakes you can make, but it's literally just not hard at all, in my opinion. I can definitely can't rank this above C tier. There's no way. I think I can rank it above Chocobo Eater. I can also rank. I think this is easier actually than Gui. I don't know. I think so, because for Gui at least you have to like think ahead a lot with like who has the lowest HP, who stands in which like slot, positionally. Well, this one it's just so easy. I don't know. I want to put it either in really high D or in really low C tier. I think I'm gonna put this one at the top of D here. Next, we have Wendigo. This fight's just all about setting up the necessary buffs and debuffs before getting him to the 30,000 HP as quickly as possible. When that happens, or when he stacks 5 cheers, he's gonna use the all-out brawl thingy basically, and then everyone gets berserked and you just hit each other until someone loses. If you have fire strike weapons, like a fully buffed up party with hastes and protects shouldn't struggle too much against them from 30,000 HP with the all-out brawl. Um, I guess the same strategy also applies to the Guardians here. They are also in this fight, right? You just provoke them with Tidus, ideally with poison proof, and they don't do anything for the rest of the fight. Alternatively, if you want, it's also possible to just totally circumvent the all-out brawl mechanic, basically. What you want to do if you want to do that is Ixion can dispel his Mighty Guard that you can't prevent. It's always going to go up at the start of the battle, but Ixion can dispel it. Since you won't have the dispel magic yet at this point, Ixion is your only way of dispelling stuff because his Aerospark does that in this mod. Then yeah, once you dispel his Mighty Guard, he's going to take a lot more damage, obviously, or double the damage. And then after that, you have means of just skipping a bunch of turns, right? So you basically want to have that, and then you get it to 30,000 HP, and then once it's about to drop below 30,000, you want to apply Darkness and Seed Cannon to him. That's gonna make sure, just like with the Chocobo Eater, that first of all he has poison, and second of all he's basically just gonna skip four of his turns, because three he will miss himself for the darkness, with the darkness, and then yeah, after that he's just gonna hit himself once and then wake up from the confusion. He does actually need to get a turn, like a turn where he can freely act to use the all-out brawl. And then after that, you can just use Threaten with Orin. You can slow Orin and then Threaten to get as many turns as possible out of it. Obviously, while he's confused, you can't physically attack him, so you'll just have to use the Fire Res with Lulu. You want to haste Lulu for this. And yeah, basically, after that, you can just finish the rest off with a slowed Orin that threatens them, and then everyone can physically attack for the last bit of HP that he should still have at that point, and 30,000 HP sounds like a lot for this point in the game, but yeah, like if he skips four of his turns and then you also have a slowed Orin threatening him, that's more than enough time to deal 30,000 damage, so yeah. That strategy maybe is a little bit more complicated, right? With all the different things you have to do for it. I guess it's like a little bit more of a sophisticated strategy, so you could rank this a little higher than the others. You can also, of course, just not do that, as I said, just have fire strike weapons on people, because it's not very expensive to customize that. Besides, you maybe wanted like multiple element weapons for anima anyway, so you might have just put fire strike and some like dual elemental weapon anyway, so you will have it for this. Um, I don't know, like some things that can go wrong in this fight is he can hit you with breaks through darkness, which shouldn't happen a lot, but it can happen. It's kind of annoying when it happens, I suppose. You can use reflex and stuff to make it less likely, of course. But other than that, I don't really see what could go wrong here. Again, like you just provoke the guards and then you kill the guards, and then yeah. Oh yeah, once the guards die, they cast Sloga, I believe. So maybe you have to be ready for that as well. You don't want to get caught off guard by the Sloga. But all in all, it's just pretty easy. Again, is it harder than Gui? I think not. It's probably a little harder than this Seymour fight, the first one. Yeah, because if you wanna go for a strategy that basically like just steamrolls them with the threaten and the seed cannon, you'll probably have to think of something a little bit more complicated, by the way. Oh yeah, if you wanna do that, of course you want Titus on Sufferer, so you can build his overdrive and then pass it on to Kimari. Yeah, I don't know if I even, so I did that for my no customization run. If you didn't know, I'm doing a no customization run, right? Just like a challenge run, makes everything much harder. I don't even know if I full broke this guy, to be honest. Even I think even without full break, you could deal 30,000 HP as long as it just doesn't have Mighty Guard, but I'm not sure about that. Yeah, so given that that margin really isn't that high, like his stats aren't so high that it's actually difficult to win against him in either the all-out brawl as long as you have those fire strike weapons or just circumvent the mechanic. I think I can't put it higher than Gui. And maybe I'm just overrating the Sinspawn Gui fight though, to be honest. It's also not difficult. Yeah, I don't know. Let's just do this, I guess. I could do this as well. Because, yeah, but Chocobo Eater is just not difficult at all. I think these three fights are considerably more difficult. Maybe I should just put them all in C tier. Might need more tiers at the top, though, if I keep going like this, because there's definitely some more difficult stuff in these guys, right? Next up, we have Evray here. Evray kind of reminds me of Seymour as well, in that he can easily overwhelm you if you don't know what you're doing, but Seymour just overwhelms you with like crazy burst damage, and Evray can overwhelm you with his crazy turn economy. But that's truly only if you're just not familiar with their mechanics. So for this fight, you kind of just have to figure out how his algorithm works, and you just need to know like on which turns he's going to use certain key moves that manipulate the turn order, like his haste and his sloga. You should probably use your two slow proof armors you will have gotten at this point to tank the Sloga. I think Riku gets one always, and then one would drop from Chocobo Eater. Yeah, so you want to tank the Sloga with that, and then I guess on like one other character that you don't want getting slowed too much on, ideally Orin, because this boss is again very vulnerable to threaten. Because his HP pool isn't very high, and he literally already slows Orin for you, so you don't even have to prepare anything. He just slows Orin, then you threaten him, and he just never gets a turn again. Yeah, just make sure to switch out your third character that should be hasted that you're using for a less useful one like Orin, and like take a quick rank 1 action before he's about to use the Sloga so that you don't lose much turn economy over that, and make sure to immediately use slow or dispel on him after his haste turn so that doesn't get out of hand too quickly either, and then yeah, you pretty much just beat this guy down. Like with Dark Buster, he can't really counter you that effectively, and he takes a lot of damage. His defenses aren't very good, especially if you full break him, it's even worse, or you don't even have to full break, like just use normal breaks if you want, I don't know. Yeah, in any case, it's just super easy to kill this guy and threaten, so yeah, pretty easy fight, but it's still harder than these guys, I think. I think this is like a top of C tier fight, if you ask me. So I guess maybe okay, it's not easy, right? Okay, I shouldn't have called it easy, but it's just not very difficult again. This fight's just all about knowing when he's gonna do what and being ready for it. So you'll maybe require a couple of tries until you figure out like the algorithm and exactly in which order he does his moves. But once you've got that figured out, I think it's honestly pretty easy. It's pretty hard to lose to this guy when you know what to do with the threaten and stuff. Like even if you're in some kind of dicey spot, you can always just hit a threaten on him and you just get like 5 billion free turns because Orin is so slow. Yeah, so next up we have got these, it's kind of hard to see. This is the, what's his name, Isaru or Isamu, I think it's Isaru, the Via Purifico Aeon fights. I wasn't sure whether to include them, but I just did it. With these, it's kind of just like they're just gimmick fights, right? These are really difficult to rank, but they're not difficult at all if you're prepared. The strategies you need to beat these Aeons are also extremely easy to execute. It's just about knowing how to set up your Aeons. I feel like this has to be a very easy one, right? So it just takes a bit of time because you have to go in and then beat one Aeon and then you see the next and then you lose again and then you have to customize for the next Aeon and so on. However, it's just not very difficult. I feel like the highest I can rank this is D, and even then I feel like it's not deserving of that either. I think this is like an E tier fight. I think it's easier than the Obliterator even. Okay, next up we have Evre Altana. This is unfortunately another not too difficult fight. I really like this fight, but it's kind of a shame that just Riku's ability to give it regen coupled with its permanent zombie status makes the fight honestly just nearly unlosable. The way it works is whenever he takes 4,000 or more damage, he's gonna forego his regular turns to just heal itself again, and considering that you could super easily just give it regen and it's just basically always gonna take 4,000 or more damage before its turns, it's like gonna just make him lose pretty much all of his turns. Then you don't have anything to worry about. The only danger with that is dying to his actual damage output rather than the Doom, which is supposed to be like the gimmick of this fight. Since like everyone has Doom and then whoever takes out the Doom first is supposed to lose the fight, but that's not actually the danger. If you use this, the danger is actually dying. So since he won't be able to haste you, which he normally likes to do, or slow himself, since he's going to waste all of his turns healing, whenever he uses his special moves, which he's forced to do because that just overwrites his AI's priority to heal when he takes 4,000 damage, whenever he's got certain like numbers on the Doom counter, he's forced to use certain special moves, and then if you're like slowed and he's hasted, he can actually just kill you before you get the opportunity to recover. In particular with the sleep status, right? If you're slowed and he's hasted and you get hit by that special move that puts everyone to sleep, you might actually just not wake up until it gets like 2 more attacks that are forced because they're special. And then yeah, you just won't wake up and die. However, that's not that much of a concern, right? It's literally the only thing that can go wrong, I feel like, if you use that regen strat. But it's still harder than the E tier fights. I think is it easier than Styromorph? Uh, Hard to say. I want to say it's maybe a little bit harder than Styromorph because that precise thing happening is a real danger. You do have to look out for that. The way you look out for that, by the way, it could be by literally not tasting him, for example, because you'll win so easily anyway. You don't even need to like go full all out with this turn manipulation. If you just like overkill his mechanic that much, it's almost like some kind of overflow mechanic where it just goes back to actually bite you. Yeah, I think this is a good ranking though. Next up, we have Seymour Natus, which is a fight that I was actually a little bit scared of in my playthrough, but it's really not that difficult, turns out. Like most Seymour fights, he can deal very overwhelming damage if you're unprepared, but the game does give you all the tools again to make him pretty much harmless, unfortunately, like with most of the Seymour fights. So again, Threaten and one turn of Silence work here, and that's more than enough time for you to apply all the buffs and debuffs that you need to not die. That coupled with him being actually vulnerable to slow, you can literally just slow him, even gives you so many turns between his attacks that once you have all those buffs in place to just survive his attacks, you'll pretty much get infinite turns, all the turns you could ever want to recover from his attacks, basically. Of course, you'll have shell, so it's harder to heal yourself, but you can always use Waka's alchemy to give high potions and stuff. They're a little expensive, but even potions probably are enough, honestly. He doesn't deal that much damage. Yeah, basically he just delays himself way too hard. You know, that's like the big problem. Maybe if this boss wasn't vulnerable to slow, I'm not sure if the fight would even be doable then. It probably would be. It would be a lot harder though, because then you'd actually struggle to recover from one of his moves before the next one comes out. If you're even willing to customize for this fight, put elemental wards on your armors, then the fight is literally just completely trivial because Seymour can deal barely any damage if you do that, because he already struggles to deal damage once he's magic broken and you have Shell. Um, However, even without that, his vulnerability to slow and Yuna's +5 agility from the top command just gives you way too many turns in between his attacks, as I just said, for him to actually be very dangerous, I feel like. Since you can't have wards though on all characters, if you want to go for that, I mean, no, sorry, since you can't have all the wards on your characters, if you want to go for the customization route, I would personally just recommend giving different wards to everyone, and then you just make sure to rotate the characters in and out depending on the next incoming attack to make the fight pretty much completely unlosable if you go for the customization strategy, or you could just have multiple different pieces of equipment, but then you'd have to waste a very quick turn basically to actually switch your equipment around. Also, if all of that wasn't enough already, the final nail in the coffin for Seymour Natus's damage output is really just that he takes so much damage from poison due to both him and Morty being vulnerable to it, that you practically never have to attack him at all. So you can focus all your turns on healing and just like let him die to poison basically, especially because he also counters you, right, if you attack, so that gives you even less of a reason to attack. So yeah, that combined with the fact you can keep pretty much just every debuff you could ever want on him forever makes this fight just really easy in my opinion. Yes, Morty Body can cleanse him, but it's not immune to silence or darkness, which lets you either completely take it out of the fight for 10 MP on Waka every 5 turns, or at least make it unable to cleanse Seymour for the very low cost of 5 MP every 5 turns, because the way it works is he has a 5 move cycle. For the first 3 he would use a spell, but if he's silenced then he can't do that, and then for the last 2, sorry, he would basically just try to apply breaks to you, which will not work if he's darked or blinded, I guess. Darked sounds kind of wrong. Um, yeah, so you basically, if you just want to do the bare minimum of preventing him from using spells, including Asuna to get rid of his stuff, or Dispel to get rid of his breaks, then you just have to use 5 MP every 5 turns. It's a very low price to pay for like keeping all the debuffs on him. So yeah, how do we rank this guy? I feel like it's harder than the first Seymour still. Is it harder than Wendigo? I feel like it's not harder than Wendigo. Like this, maybe? Yeah, maybe like that. He does, of course, get new spells like Break and Death, but again, it doesn't do anything. If you just like think of it as Break and Death, just basically automatically kill off a character in your party, that's totally fine. You have way more than enough turns to just heal them and then, or yeah, I mean, revive them, heal them, and then reapply their buffs. Or in the case of Petrify, you just use a soft on them, and then same thing, right? So yeah, it's not very difficult really. But I feel like I'm overrating the Gui fight. I don't know. Maybe it's just because it's so early in the game. It feels wrong to just have it so high up. Yeah, I don't know. We can look at everything again once we're done with the tier list. For now, let's keep moving to Nislag. Once again, I would say this is actually a pretty easy fight because he lacks offensive potential, like many of the Seymours. Aside from his AoE Thundaga, which he uses as a counter only when he retreats into his shell, which by the way can be easily blocked by just a null shock, he literally only has single target moves, making him completely harmless for most of the fight, as long as you don't run out of MP to use life or Phoenix Downs to revive people, of course. His attacks do deal a lot of damage, so they will often just kill characters off. Again, it's just not a problem, you just revive them, and it's so slow anyway, it doesn't do anything. So once his shell breaks, though, he is going to become much faster, and he's going to threaten to overwhelm you with that, which is pretty much the only thing that can actually go wrong in this fight. But if you already know what's coming, it's very simple to just either burst him down once he loses his shell, for example, with the easy overdrives that you're gonna automatically get anyway if you're running Comrade from the Megatons he has, or even his regular attacks charge overdrives by a lot, but it's especially that Megaton, it just deals a billion damage, just completely nukes one character, but it also just gives like instantly the full overdrive to the other two if everyone's in Comrade for this fight. So yeah, you're gonna have a lot of overdrives for this fight. And you can just use them to basically just kill it immediately once it goes out of its shell. Alternatively, if you don't want to do that, you can also just prepare your defenses. Like, it still only has single target moves, it's just a little bit faster now, so it's not exactly difficult to survive. The only actual potential issue here in this fight is that his high HP pool might make you run out of resources, I feel like, before the fight is over if you're not prepared. However, that is also mitigated by his resulting weakness from his high HP pool to gravity-based attacks like Demi or especially Demi Fury, and with his tendency to very quickly charge your overdrives, the Demi Fury is just gonna super quickly deplete this guy's HP pool, so I feel like there really isn't a single problem with this. This is for sure not even a C tier fight, this is definitely D tier or below. I think it's even easier than these guys. I think it's, yeah, is it easier than Altana? I don't know. Easier than Spheromorph? And I think it's harder than Spheromorph, but easier than every Altana. Yeah, let's do it like that. Next up is Sanctuary Keeper. This is another fight with highly varied difficulty and depending on your willingness to customize. He will always lead with his signature attack Photon Wings, which inflicts a bunch of statuses including sleep, so you're probably going to get wiped by this if you don't either have at least one character who resists these statuses or set up auto lives beforehand. But once you survive the first move, the fight becomes pretty easy again because he has no other attacks that can hit more than one character, so it's kind of like the Nuzlocke problem again. And you have 5 more turns to prepare for the next Photon Wings, on which he can't do anything dangerous whatsoever. As I said, only single target attacks. Furthermore, his Mana Breath and Flare attacks, they always go on the character with the highest HP, making it super easy for you not to just build her overdrive with the double overdrive weapon she gets from the start of the game and the Comrade overdrive mode. He does have an annoying counter every 2 to 4 hits, but poison works really well on him, so you don't even have to deal with it if you don't want to. Darkness does have diminishing returns because it accelerates his counter, first of all, and he also stacks 1 stack of aim every time it's inflicted to him. So while the darkness does allow you to circumvent the counter a bit for a while, it's going to make it increasingly more difficult to do that, so you really don't have to attack him all that much. Maybe you can do it at the start a bit. But his counter really is annoying. I think it just purges all your buffs, so you don't really want to get hit by that. It's pretty annoying. All in all, if you're equipped to deal with Photon Wings, it's pretty much impossible to lose in this fight. So if you either, have a good strategy with surviving the first one with auto lives and then always building Yuna's overdrive like I did because I wasn't allowed to customize, or alternatively with good armor pieces that let you survive the Photon Wings, like the only hard thing in this fight is actually managing to struggle with it, so I definitely can't rank it highly, that's for sure. I think this is a D tier one. Yeah, I think let's put this one on top of D tier. Now for the Spectral Keeper. This one has some things going for it in terms of difficulty. First of all, it counters every move with Reap, which will kill every character in front of him, and because of this, dealing damage to it requires way more careful planning than with most bosses, since you have to know where it's going to face, which is, the direction of the character it last attacked, and then already prepare 2 of your characters to stand behind that point when it comes to that time, when you're trying to deal damage, as well as then make it so that the attacked character gets a turn quickly after him and then moves out of the way quickly, and then you can actually start dealing damage, right? Also, poison is not a viable strategy here, so you are actually forced to deal with this mechanic. You can't just stall him out with poison like you can do with many other bosses. The 2 attacks he has are Berserk and Poison Tail. The problem with that is his mechanics aren't too easy to see the pattern, and they work based on turn delay basically and alternate between Berserk and Poison variants, and one of them hits the character with the highest and the other with the lowest turn delay pretty much. And I definitely couldn't blame you if you didn't notice that, because I feel like you could just think it's random or whatever. However, even if you don't see the pattern, making the characters stand in a triangle just helps a lot still. If like they're in a triangle, then two characters are always automatically going to be behind the Spectral Keeper whenever it attacks one character. The glyph mines also can be troublesome, but they have a pretty big cooldown, so Yuna's double overdrive weapon again will make it easy enough for her to build her overdrive in time for when the glyph mines come. So it's relatively high damage, and also your ability to always strategically sacrifice a character to reap basically in a pinch to immediately fill her overdrive makes glyph mines extremely manageable. I think the reap heals it though, so you don't want to do that a lot ideally. So, but yeah, I mean, like if you really would be about to just die to glyph mines, you can always do that to immediately fill Yuna's Aeon overdrive, and then you can just summon and block the glyph mines while also dealing, of course, max damage to it, and then that will mitigate the repeal. So yeah, that's of course only if you actually know to look out for the glyph mines and actively keep Yuna's overdrive in mind. So that's another thing you actually have to keep track of in this fight. The problem that does hold this boss back is that it pretty much lets you fight on your own terms and at your own pace again, like the Spheromorph problem and the first Seymour problem, I guess. Because his non-counter attacks aren't dangerous at all. They do deal somewhat high damage, but he's also not very fast, and it's only gonna hit one character at most. And even if you get hit by the glyph mines, it's really just very recoverable. Like you can definitely recover from that if you get hit by the glyph mines. Yeah, so whenever that happens, it's usually not too hard to deal with an enemy, right? When you basically get to pick and choose on your own terms when he's actually able to deal damage to you. So yeah, I can't rank it too highly, but as I've said, there are many mechanics you have to actually actively pay attention to in this fight, so it requires more brains for sure than most of the other bosses so far. Also, he is vulnerable to threaten again, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, I mean, Threaten again lets you just deal so much damage for free against this boss with the slow and Threaten. I think I'm gonna put it above C tier, that's for sure. There's just too much to keep track of in this fight for it to be lower than B tier. I don't know if it's harder, though I think it's not harder than Seymour Flex. Yunalesca is next, and Yunalesca is a very tedious fight because her potent counters really disincentivize you from attacking her, especially with special damage, which you will counter with a Blizzaga on your entire party, which is probably going to kill you if you don't have the Null Frost for it. But fortunately, poison does work here, so you can rely on that, even if it takes pretty long for her to die to just poison. In the first two phases, I would say Unalaska's attacks are pretty much just a knowledge check. They're not dangerous at all if you know what they are, so you just have to switch in zombies or death-proof characters, of which you should have at least one for the Mega Death turns, and then you need to switch in the non-zombies for the Mega Life, and then you're basically good to go. There's nothing that can really go wrong in the first phase. Actually, there is one thing, but let's talk about that later, because that it only like becomes a problem in the third phase. In the second phase, she will not zombie strike you anymore, so you'll ideally actually want to already have three zombified characters going into it. If you really want to, I think her counter does still apply zombie, but yeah, you ideally don't want to trigger those counters, right? Because they also break you and they do deal a bit of damage at least, but it's not that terrible in the second phase if you have to reapply a zombie. By the way, the reason you need the zombie characters is because Dark Viper will massively heal those characters instead of dealing damage to them, which she spams, obviously, and that's even going to out-heal the poison damage that they might be taking. So yeah, really the only thing that can go wrong here is if your zombified characters actually die in phase 1 to the zombie strikes, which can happen if you get unlucky and she keeps targeting the same character with the zombie strike over and over again. So in this case, you'll probably have to make like a minor improvisation and either purposefully trigger her counter, as I said, or you want to temporarily, I guess, cleanse the character of the zombie status and then heal them, then let them get zombified again, or you can use Ornn's guard mechanics to protect them, assuming that the endangered character isn't Ornn himself, of course. So yeah, I mean, as long as you just do that, right? Phase one and two are totally trivial. Just for the Dark Viper, get your zombies in, and they will not take any damage. And then for the Mega Life, just get your regular characters in, and then for the Mega Death, just get your zombies in again. The only thing that can go wrong here is you make the wrong decisions about who to keep zombified and who to keep in the normal status. Of course, I'm pretty sure it would be ideal to just have. I guess if you have a slow proof character, maybe you could also put them in zombie, but yeah, ideally, I feel like you would want your less useful characters to be the ones that get hit by the zombie because Dark Viper will sure heal them, but it's also gonna give them a bunch of annoying statuses, including, I believe, slow, which will make them harder to use. So you'll just want like maybe Orin or something if you don't want to use them. Like I didn't use Orin that much except for Threaten. Someone like that you can keep zombied, and then yeah, like your strong party that you actually want to use as a front whenever possible. You want to keep them probably not zombified. And then in phase three, she does start to actually become a little bit dangerous because she's, in addition to all her other still useless attacks, she will also add Mega Doom and Mind Blast to her arsenal, which are certainly very inconvenient. You'll probably want to tank those on your more redundant characters again, but since that won't always be possible, you'll probably need to get hit by that on some of your important characters as well. The key here is probably to just manage your doom timer so that only one character dies to it at a time, which should give you enough time to get them back up and running, as opposed to when you have multiple deaths back to back, which can be very troublesome in a fight like this. But in general, this fight is also really just about like knowing her AI or algorithm or whatever you want to call it, and then being good at maneuvering the characters around and like shifting their turns to the right time by using the correctly ranked actions at the right time. Because you're really slow, sluggish zombie guys, you want them to again get a turn as soon as possible, allowing them to switch out so your other characters can actually do stuff. But still, even if the fight does require that skill, once you have figured out what to do, you barely need to plan ahead or do anything complicated at all to win. This is another fight where it just feels like you're following a set choreography until she just eventually dies to the poison. So I can't rank Yunalesca too highly again. It's just mostly a knowledge check for the first two phases, and then the third one really is not difficult, really. Since a D tier, maybe top of D tier, yeah, let's do it like that. Next up, we have another one of these annoying status fights, which is the fight against the Sin's Core and Janaeus or whatever. Also, the ones against Sin's Fins that come before this, of course, because it's one fight. The Fins, or I guess actually it's technically not one fight, but you don't get healed between them, so I will count them as one. The Fin fights are just extremely easy, they're barely worth talking about. I mean, they don't do anything except just deal low to moderate damage with their attacks. Just use buffs if you have to, and then just wait until it charges to Gravija, or give it armor or mental break or whatever, and then just go kill it, I guess. Yeah, there isn't anything more to say about that fight. The core fight, however, is a lot more interesting. It's still not particularly difficult, especially again if you're willing to customize. This is another fight where if you're immune to the more annoying of these statuses that Janaeus and yeah, actually only Janaeus I think can apply, then it's pretty much unlosable once again. In case you don't want to customize though for a relatively easy fight, which is probably the case, then it's still not even hard in my opinion. Just need to make sure to magic break the core like once every 3 turns or whatever. However long it takes for it to use another Govija after it uses the last one, I think it's 3 turns. Yeah, magic break, of course, because that's easier than shelling yourself. You could also have magic defense up armor, but then you have to be literally full HP pretty much to tank it, and I think that's more risky. Just go with the magic break if you ask me. And then, other than that one thing, which is to keep the core magic broken, you simply need to switch out your important characters when like the big status moves by Janaeus are coming, and then yeah, that's literally all. I don't think anything can really go wrong in this fight if you do that. So where do you rank it here? I want to say it's easier than Unalaska. Is it easier than Spec? No, I think not. It's like between these two, I think. Yeah. Next up, we have the Overdrive Sin. This fight is just a test of how much damage you can deal before he gets a certain amount of turns, basically. Every move of his is predetermined depending on which turn number it is, so that's super easy to deal with all his moves because you already know exactly what's coming for every single turn. And all of these moves actually barely deal any damage or are easily blocked, like the Water Gap, for which you just need an ult tide. Maybe you can also silence them, actually. I'm not even sure if you can silence them. One of the two. I mean, it doesn't really matter. So, Gaze is the only move that he has that can actually kill you if you remember to use silence or an ult tide for the Water Gap, assuming silence works. I do think it works. I'm pretty sure it works. Uh, but yeah, so you have 4 turns in between his 2 gazes. You will get zombified, but he does use the negation thing, which gets rid of not just yours, but also his own buffs and debuffs. So that's gonna get rid of your zombie anyway, actually. So you don't even need to cure that. You might have to give antidotes to yourself, maybe, because the gaze will give you poison, so you can give antidotes to yourself and then wait for the zombie to get cleansed, and then you can heal for the next gaze. Yeah, again, as I said, other than Gaze, none of his moves can actually deal lethal damage, assuming you don't get hit by the Water Ga. So you can't deal damage and threaten to him, so I'm glad that's the thing because he has a break threat encounter. So this is one of the first bosses that you can't just cheese with threaten. I'm really happy to that. However, I guess you can use the threat, like if the gaze thing gives you trouble, you can use threaten there, for example, basically in order to just get a bunch of turns that allow you to cleanse your statuses and heal or whatever. So you do have 4 turns in between the gazes, but that's more like 4 turns with a million more. I mean, 4 enemy turns with like a million more turns of your own, however many you need really, with the threaten that you can also throw in there. I feel like if you have double cast for this fight, it should be extremely easy because double cast Demi from Lulu and then Riku's copycat will just completely demolish his HP pool very quickly. When using the Demi copycat strategy, you should always try to use the Demis alternatingly between Lulu and Riku, even though Riku might sometimes get 2 turns in between Lulu's turns. That's just to make it sure that Riku is the one that gets hit with the slow counter. That happens for every 4th attack, I believe, that hits the overdrive Sin, because she should have slow proof, so yeah, it won't really set you behind at all if that happens. His 9,999 MP pool also lets you very easily recover all your MP back with Osmos if you did bother to learn that, which I probably would. Honestly, by the way, I've never done this without double casts. I don't really know how hard or easy this fight would be if you went for like a full physical strategy. You can't even hit him with most of your physical characters for the first couple turns because he's going to be too far away, so I feel like you really should use magic. But if you just didn't go the double cast route with Lulu and then you like went down for the ultimate instead of going up on Earth's Grid, then maybe that's going to give you trouble here. I can't really say. I feel like if that's the case, especially if you want to go for a physical armor, then I would, sorry, not armor, if you go for a physical party, I feel like the next best thing you can do is maybe using delay attack. Maybe like delay attack and copycat would probably be relatively effective against this guy, because I know delay definitely works on him, and then Titus can also deal a good amount of damage while delaying. Of course, Riku won't deal much damage with her copycats, but yeah, I mean, it's fine, right? So how do we rank this fight? I remember for me, when I did use the double cast Demi strategies, it wasn't really close. Like, we were only halfway or so in the fight when I already killed this guy pretty much, so it can't really be that hard, I feel like, even if you don't have the double cast. It's definitely not higher than C tier, but I think it's harder than Unalaska too. I think it's like low C. I think it's harder than Seymour 1. Is it harder than Natas? Probably not. I don't know. I think this is good, right? That's probably a good ranking. Okay, so now we have Seymour Omnis next. This boss received actually a very major overhaul. So when I first played this mod, which I think was version 1.6, this fight was totally different. So if you hear this and you feel like I'm talking about a different enemy, then yeah, you probably also played an older version of the mod. Um, Yeah, I mean, this is like very similar formula again to all the other Seymour fights. He just deals very overwhelming damage if you're not prepared, but again, the usual strategies just buy you enough time to set up some of your defenses. And at this point, you should probably really have some elemental wards for this boss, since they really won't cost you much anymore with the late game economy we're in here. Um, Another thing here is, of course, that you get to pick and choose which attacks you will use against you for the most part. So you can usually just make him do whatever is convenient for you, whatever you've got prepared with the elemental wards that you've got equipped, which does diminish the difficulty of the fight by a lot. Yeah, so you can like make him attack your wards, and then if you have shell, maybe even reflect, you're pretty much good to go. Especially if you go further than just customizing elemental wards, you can also do elemental proof stuff or elemental eater stuff. Actually, I don't know if you have the resources for the eater stuff yet, whatever. But yeah, I mean, even just wards, right? They just reduce the damage so much already, it just makes it so much easier. You just need to also make sure to have null spells ready, especially for the status moves like Brimstone or such. Like the ones that Riku can also mix with the like consumables, right? You get them at the start of the game that deal elemental damage, and then you can mix those with a high palo potion, and then it does the brimstone and that kind of stuff. It just applies a bunch of statuses like poison and sleep, and you don't want them, of course, so you want to block as many of those as possible with your elemental null spells. And yeah, I mean, once you can survive his attacks, you'll pretty much have, again, infinite time to recover because he's so slow with his vulnerabilities. He's slow again, like Seymour Natus. This time, summons can block his attacks, including his overdrive. And coupled with the Rook overdrive mode with how many spells he casts, it should never be an issue for you not to have overdrive in time for his overdrive, which is what's it called? Okay, I don't even remember what his overdrive is called, whatever. You know, the one he uses in the Sinspawn Gui fight in the second one, it deals a lot of damage. And yeah, of course, Yuna needs to be in to cast the null spells anyway, so you only get her overdrive automatically. Even without any elemental wards, by the way, it's still possible to win this fight, it's just a bit less consistent. The only potential problem I could see is you have to kill him twice before he gets his second overdrive, which will give him auto life again. Again, it could be somewhat difficult to do this without double cast. I'm not sure. I have done it with double cast because Lulu just has so much more flexibility with exploiting his weaknesses. Since she has access to all the spells and you don't need to shift your equipment around. But I'm sure a physical damage party can also get the job done because if you have multiple elemental strike weapons, which again don't cost much to customize at all, you can just switch back and forth in between. And of course, that's a rank 1 action, so it's pretty fast. Overall, I think this boss isn't really difficult, especially if, unlike me, you can customize, right? Just make your armor, it really doesn't cost much, and it takes away so much from his damage, it's just crazy, especially if you then also use Reflect, but actually I don't even want to do that, to be honest, because if you have Reflect, you can't use null spells on yourself, and then you're gonna get hit by the Brimstone-like moves, and I'm just not a fan of that. So I prefer to actually not use Reflect against this new iteration of Omnis. The old one, I think Reflect was pretty much mandatory, or maybe not mandatory, but like it made the fight way easier. Nowadays, honestly, I feel like Reflect isn't even good here. Yeah, but anyway, how do I want to rank this one? I'm sure it's harder than the first Seymour and also harder than Natus. I think this is at least B tier. I think it's harder than Spectral Keeper too. So is Flux or Omnis harder? That's the question here. With Flux, again, it's just, dealing with those synchronized attacks. It's difficult with Omnis, honestly. It's really not very difficult at all, to be honest. I don't know. I guess at the start it can be difficult because he has really high evasion or something, so you need some aims basically to mitigate that. And yeah, it could be a little difficult to apply breaks to him, but again, I don't think it's very difficult, but I also don't think the Spectral Keeper is that difficult. I mean, B tier sounds pretty high, but honestly, it's really not that hard, I don't know. Like, I'm even considering putting these here down. I think Flux definitely deserves to be B tier. We'll leave it for like this for now. Again, we can make revisions at the end. So yeah, to sum it up, I think as I've said, it's just like he's so slow. He's just way too slow. He just gives you so much time to recover between the attacks. That's the problem, basically. So once you get yourself into a state where you can survive his attacks once, you're good to go for the entire rest of the fight because you will always have way too much time to recover from his attacks. Next up is Braska's final Aeon. I wish this fight was a little bit more difficult, personally. The problem with Bronski's final Aeon is just that he's too vulnerable to many status effects, in my opinion. And of course, you can also just go all out against him. You can customize everything you want and use all your special spheres, like the yellow ones, whatever you want. So Break, Silence, and Darkness all just work really well on him, all of which can easily be applied with Riku's use command and then full break on Riku. Of course, you don't have to have full break on Riku. I'm aware she doesn't naturally learn that. I feel like it's just really good to give her full break anyway. And besides, even if you don't want to necessarily have it for the other fights, it's just good to give her full break for this one anyway. I feel like because you can just reset since this is the end of the game. Yeah, so just give him all the debuffs. If he has silence and darkness as well as being full broken, you kind of can't do anything. The only thing you have to watch out is the pagodas, of course. I do believe that they cleanse his status ailments basically when they give him the power wave, which also charges his overdrive. So you kind of have to kill the pagodas, but the problem is it's just really not difficult. Again, a physical party might struggle more here. If you have a magic party, the advantage of that is that Lulu can basically, with her double cast, or even someone else, if it's not necessarily Lulu for you, they can just use weaker spells on purpose to not overkill the pagodas by too much, because the redundant damage when you kill them basically just overflows and adds on top to their max HP next time they respawn. However, even if you mismanage that, you get some shadow gems before this point, and I think the shadow gems just make it way too easy to kill the pagodas even if they have too much HP. I would say the only thing you have to actually watch out for here are, first of all, I guess the sword swipe attacks in phase 2. If you do have him full broken, maybe you'll also want protect on your characters, because that attack actually can't miss. It deals a little bit of damage, but I feel like you wouldn't die even without protect. I'm not sure anymore, but yeah, I mean, it's not too much to ask to just put protect on yourself at some point in a pretty long fight, right? It's only in phase 2. So yeah, there's that first of all. Even if he's on dark, he cannot do that. But more importantly, what I was actually going to say is the ultimate jack shot, I believe, which he does when he transitions from phase 1 to 2, basically. It's just some kind of super special move. It also deals special damage, and it's probably going to kill off your weaker characters, because I think you can't protect or use shell against it. So yeah, you probably just want to switch out your like really frail characters like Riku and then put in some beefy guys like Orin and Dwaka, or you can also just customize armors with more defensive stats for that kind of thing. I don't actually know if it deals physical or magic damage right now, or I mean no, sorry, it's special damage, but like whether it uses the physical or magical stats, or maybe it doesn't use either. I don't know. But yeah, in any case, it's just not very difficult. It's basically a race against time. You have to kill him before he ejects all your characters with his overdrive, or more specifically with his third overdrive and onwards, because the first two you can just get rid of. Like you can skip the first two overdrive turns by talking to him with Titus. And then the third one he's gonna definitely use, and then he's gonna eject your characters with that pretty much, and you'll just be down to only two characters, and you just have to kill him before he ejects all your characters. He's not dangerous, as I said, just keep him full broken, silence, stunned in darkness, and he just doesn't deal any damage. That's again the problem with this boss, just too vulnerable to those status effects. Now, maybe depending on the builds, you could struggle to kill him in time, I'm not sure. However, I still won't rank this boss very highly because it doesn't require any complex strategy. Just whenever, one of those statuses expires, except the full breakers that can't expire, you just reapply it. Whenever the pagodas spawn, you just kill them, and then with the rest of your turns, you just attack them. Like, just, select your highest damaging move and then do that. And then when you take damage, you can use some healing items, I guess, which you also don't have to conserve. So yeah, there's no semblance of a complex strategy you need here. Just, do the thing that makes the number go up, basically. So with that in mind, how do we rank this guy? I want to almost put him in D tier, because he really doesn't have that much HP, and you can just deal so much damage to him quite easily, to be honest. Okay, is it easier than Seymour 1? I think not, or I don't know, I think it's similar. Maybe we put it on top of him, I mean, on top of D. Like this, maybe. But yeah, I feel like this guy's a bit harder. Let's do it like this, so he's high D tier, not the top though. Okay, so now we have got you, Jimbo. Of course, you can kind of do stuff in whatever order you want at this point. I personally ended up, I think, actually doing Crazy Ochu first as my very first post-game boss, but yeah, I think you're supposed to do Yojimbo first. The guy in the monster arena gives you the breakdown of the order that was intended for the post-game bosses, not in the sense that like you're not allowed to do them, otherwise you're cheating in a different order, but just I guess the recommended order would be that you do Yojimbo first. And sure, you can do that as well. It's like no, there's nothing wrong with this. So with Yojimbo, he has just so many extreme glaring weaknesses that you can exploit that come to mind immediately. But first of all, let's talk about the strengths. So his Wakizashi can deal a lot of damage, so this is like the one way you can actually lose the fight, I feel like. So it's definitely best to keep Yojimbo full broken, and I'm not certain if Protect works against that. If it does, you probably want to Protect as well. But its vulnerability to delay and threaten just give you so much time to set up all your defenses in this fight to the point where Wakizashi shouldn't be able to kill you anymore. And you only have to hit him twice before between his turns. I mean, to not die to Zenmato. The way Yojimbo works in this mod, in both the regular as well as the crazy variant, of course, if you forgot or whatever, or if you haven't even played the mod, in which case I don't know why you're watching, but yeah, is you like basically have to hit him to make his overdrive go up, and then he uses Zenmato whenever his overdrive is not full, so it works actually the other way around. Yeah, you only have to hit him twice, which is really not a lot, so you should never really die to Zenmato, and his HP pool is just so low for a boss at this point in the game. It's way lower than all the other bosses you'll have faced so far. Like, Seymour Omnis has probably like 3 times as effective HP, Braska's Final Aeon as well, or whatever. So yeah, that, and then he's also weak to lightning, which you can pretty easily exploit. That just makes him die super quickly to both physical and magical damage, no matter what kind of strategy you're using. I suppose before possible Wakizashi turns, if your frailer characters can't survive, it's probably best to switch in some tankier guys like Orin and Waka again, but even if 2 of your characters die to it, which I think happened to me, it's still easily possible to recover as long as one person with decently low turn delay survived. So you can just switch them out. Also, you need a high agility character, ideally one that says that. That's not in right now. So you can like switch that person out for the high agility character, or maybe the survivor is the high agility character, that also works, and then you can just use a Phoenix down and switch out for Orin and threaten him. So yeah, that definitely works, because the threaten's gonna make him skip a bunch of turns, and then you can use that to recover from the Wakizashi. So yeah, even though Wakizashi is dangerous and his algorithm isn't perfectly predictable, just some basic precautions to not die to a possible Wakizashi will already just easily win you this fight in my experience. It's just not very difficult because you don't even have to deal with the Wakizashi more than like once or maybe at most twice, I feel like, before the fight is over if you do it right, just because his HP pool is really low. It's like, what, 166,000 HP or something. And yeah, on top of that, of course, he just doesn't have any resistance to threaten, so you just get a bunch of free turns, and slow and threaten with Orin again. It works super well for offensive usages. If you really struggle with the fight, you can always just do that and kill him before he literally even gets a turn if you're struggling. So yeah, I can't rank Yojimbo very highly, unfortunately. Um, However, spoilers, the crazy Yojimbo fight fixes most of those weaknesses, so that's gonna be a way more interesting one to talk about. But for now, can I even put him in C tier? I think I can't, to be honest. Like, this is just so easy again, but it's like top D maybe. Or like very low C tier. Let's put him in very low C tier, I think. Because again, the Wakizashi at least kills you. Like most of these bosses in D tier, they don't have any kill threat on you, basically. That's why they're D tier. This guy definitely can kill you if you're not careful. Next up, we have this. I think we'll do Geoscano after the Crazy Aeons, I'm not sure. Yeah, you're supposed to do your Jimbo first, and then Ultima Weapon, and then the Crazy Aeons as well as Crazy Ochu and Geoscano, I think, in whatever order you want. And then, like, I think Omega Weapon is supposed to be on relatively late, but you can do them pretty much like with the Crazy Aeons, I guess. And then Remium Temple is supposed to be done as the penultimate thing right before Seraph, of course. I don't know. Yeah, I could also do Geoscano next, but let's just do the Crazy Aeons first, I feel like. Oh no, sorry, wait, I forgot about Ultima. We haven't even done Ultima yet. Okay, honestly, but Ultima is like another one of those fights where, with Yojimbo, where there's another version of the fight that just basically fixes his glaring weaknesses. With Ultima, there isn't that much to say about him. He's just like Omega Weapon, but if his stats were just too low to deal any significant damage, and he wasn't immune to all the statuses that make it impossible for it to actually use any of the somewhat dangerous moves it does possess. So I'm honestly very glad that Ultima is pretty easy because getting there without using too much MP is the actual challenge, given that you don't get healed before the fight and you have to deal with the strongest regular monsters in the game in this place, the Omega Ruins. But actually, so back to the fight in any case, like if you just keep silencing and blinding him, he basically can't do anything except use his special moves every 2 turns. So the special moves are basically Hyper Spark, which deals pretty low damage and inflicts poison, at least if he's full broken, right? With no way to get rid of his full break and these terrible stats that Ultima Weapon has. Like, these special moves just aren't the slightest bit problematic in my opinion. Hyper Spark is probably the strongest of them, and it still deals pretty insignificant damage. The poison you can just cure with the All Bad Potion, and then if you have an alchemy weapon, I think it also just out heals the damage of Hyper Spark as well. So yeah, it's basically like he never used it once you use an All Bad Potion, except for the curse you'll get actually. So yeah, you probably want to cure the curse at least on Yuna because of the overdrive, which we can talk about later. His other special moves are Core Energy, which does literally nothing, and Stone Breath, which is the only one you actually have to watch out for. For Stone Breath, just make sure to have at least one Stone Proof character, and that's got relatively low turn delay after the Stone Breath, because they're gonna get slowed. And then you just switch them out for Riku. You will have switched out before that point, and then use an All Bad Potion, and then reapply the Haste Ga, and you're good to go, basically, considering that he's just gonna do nothing with his next turn because of the Darkness and Silence. That shouldn't be an issue. Because he does always cycle through his moves in that exact order, the special moves thread, you'll always know when the Stone Breath is coming, so it's not at all difficult to prepare for it. You just have to know it's coming, and then, yeah, literally the only dangerous thing in this fight is his Nova Overdrive, which deals exactly 9,998 damage to everyone. Yeah, so you'll probably want to block that with an Aeon Autolife can also work if you want to use that MP, but personally I found myself pretty short on MP for this fight, because, you know, you have to go through the Omega Ruins. So yeah, I prefer to block it with an Aeon. That's the only thing that can go wrong, I feel like, because he just wastes so many of his turns doing nothing because of the Darkness and Silence, as well as not dealing high damage with his other moves. It can be a bit difficult in my experience to get Yuna's overdrive before his overdrive. However, with her double overdrive weapon, I doubt you'll struggle too much with it. Worst case, you can just not attack Ultima weapon all that much until you have Yuna's overdrive, because poison works just fine on him. He doesn't have much HP and poison deals a lot of damage, so you can just like let him take out. I mean, you don't have to let him take out the poison completely, like never attack him, but you know, just build up Yuna's overdrive if you're unsure, and then you can start attacking. You're definitely not rushing. You're not in any kind of rush, basically, to kill him with how much damage poison deals, is what I meant. I'm pretty sure like many overdrive modes can do it just fine. Maybe you can even put Yuna on healer and just spam pray until she has her overdrive. I don't know. I can think of many ways in which she can probably very reliably build her overdrive in time for the Nova. Um, if you really struggle with it, you can also just have Titus in with her to simply entrust his limit break or overdrive. Sorry. You can also, I guess, use like stamina tablets. I don't know if you get them at this point. I feel like the scan or sensor text, if I'm not mistaken, does tell you to potentially use stamina tablets to tank Nova, but I feel like my characters didn't even have 5000 HP at this point, most of them, so it's probably not the best strategy. I would just, you know, block it with an Aeon, considering that's not too difficult. So I have to rank this fight super low, to be honest. It's really easy. If his stats were a little higher, this wouldn't be so easy. But is it E tier easy? I think not, no. You can still lose to the Stone Breath if you mismanage it. Like if you do something with a high turn delay before Stone Breath, because you'll get slowed, that can be really bad, so you can lose to that. I think it's easier than every Altana. Is it? Yeah, it's also a bit harder than this lag, let's say. It's here, probably. Next up, we have Crazy Belfour, the Unholy Time Mage. The most interesting gimmick in this fight is that he's basically gonna delay the character with the least turn delay just into oblivion with Sonic Wings attack. I think that's what it's called. And that just practically removes the character from the fight if you choose to ignore the Sonic Wings. Um, However, if you just kill off that character once they get hit by the Sonic Wings, and then you just revive them, you'll be much better off. And I think that's like the key strategy to actually winning this fight. I found it very difficult while trying to just keep everyone alive and not have anyone ever die. That seems just like a bad way of fighting this boss. I'm pretty sure you're meant to just kill your characters if they get hit by that Sonic Wings, so I guess you shouldn't overbuff your characters here. Um, the problem is none of his attacks except his overdrive deal any noteworthy damage once he's full broken. The redeeming factor there is he can be a little hard to hit if your luck stats and your accuracy aren't actually accuracy barely even matters here. It's just luck mainly. Yeah. So if your luck stat is bad, I guess it can just be difficult to hit. That's the only problem. Um, the overdrive you can tank also. Most of his attacks, as I said, just don't deal any damage, but even the overdrive is not that strong. This isn't one of those fights where you definitely have to summon a Rev Autolife for the overdrive. Like for me, my Orin and Waka could tank that without much problem. Even Lulu could tank it without much problem. That's if they're not mental broken, at least, I think. So yeah, if you have some decently tanky characters, you can just switch them in and stuff. In a pinch, you can also use Autolife for the overdrive. Like, this fight isn't so long, so it's fine probably to use Autolives as well. Uh, Blocking with an Aeon is difficult, though. It's not a reliable strategy in this fight, in my experience, which you could do if you do get the Aeon, but this is like the only thing that Balfour really has going for him, in my opinion, except also that gimmick where if you don't know you're supposed to kill your characters, right, it's just hard to block his overdrive. Because there's also Maelstrom, which curses again, and it's much more difficult to get rid of the curse here because the fight's pretty chaotic and it's relatively difficult to predict, what he's gonna do further in the future, along with him being quite fast and, or I mean, by the way, what okay, I shouldn't have phrased it like that. It's not difficult to predict which moves he's going to use because he has a pretty set action pattern with like which situations you're going to be in the far future. Because just especially the Sonic Wings, it's kind of difficult to plan ahead that much who's going to get hit by it, and then you'll have to kill the character and then reapply some buffs and stuff. So yeah, it's not super easy to like just follow a set flowchart for this fight. That's what I meant. And then yeah, that along with him being pretty fast and like not giving you that much time to comfortably heal off some of your more minor status ailments like curse just makes it difficult to build overdrives in this fight in my experience. Again, he does take quite a bit of damage from poison like many of the other bosses, so you don't have to attack him that much, so that makes it less bad that he gets so many turns, I guess. However, I think if you don't have any break damage limits yet, which is very possible, given that I feel like many players would probably start with Crazy Valor 4 when it comes to all the bosses that can drop break damage limit. So if you don't have a break damage limit, I think this fight can actually be pretty difficult because the fight can take a while if you don't have break damage limits, because HP pool is actually very respectable for being such a fast and nimble boss. You'd expect him to be more frail, right? But he's kind of not actually. It's going to take a while for him to take out the poison, and you ideally want to deal your own damage. Quite a bit of it, in fact, in this fight, so break damage limit helps very much so. Crazy Valfor is just really good at wearing you down over time, so if the fight goes on for a while, I really would not underestimate the potential difficulty of this boss. It just depends on when you fight him as well. Of course, if you fight him super late, like if this is the last Aeon that you do, then it's gonna be pretty easy, I feel like. But kind of, if we're looking at it from the lens of this is probably the very first one you'll try, I feel like this might actually be the hardest boss we've had so far. His attacks, like, it's either the Maelstrom or the Energy Ray, they apply Mental Break, right? And again, you don't have that much time to cure your status ailments and heal in this fight, so once, you get all your characters mental broken, it's not going to be easy to tank his overdrive and stuff anymore, so yeah, I feel like, as I said, you will get worn down over time. I actually want to put this in A tier, I think. Crazy Valor 4 deserves a decently high ranking given that most people We'll probably tackle him right after Ultimate Weapon on Yojimbo without having break damage limit yet. Yeah, I think this is a good placement. Basically, if you can kill him quickly, it's way lower. If you have the stats and equipment to kill him pretty fast, I would say it's more like maybe low B tier. But yeah, so far I'd say it's the hardest fight with when most people are likely to attempt it. Next up is Crazy Ifrit then. This guy again suffers from like the spheromorph and Seymour 1 syndrome where he has a completely trivial first phase as well as a much more difficult second one, but your stuff from the first phase carries over, so you can just build so much momentum that you just like steamroll the second phase anyway. That's the problem with this fight. In his first phase, he will simply spam Meteor Strike, which only deals minor damage and gives you Darkened Silence, if I'm not mistaken. In any case, it's no status ailment that's more troublesome. If I forgot something, it's just minor stuff. However, he does counter everything you do with his incredibly strong regular attack, which probably will kill your characters if you're not prepared for it. That means phase 1 is another one of these fights, which just lets you go at your own pace. And that usually just means you get to stall out the boss until you've set up everything you need to actually start dealing with it. In this case, you could use that time, for example, to set up protects on everyone and full breaks and just get your physically tanky characters out and like haste them, maybe even give them regen, you know. And then once he enters the second phase, you'll just try to take him on head on and prepare for a tough battle because he also has a mechanic like the Wendigo where he's gonna go into his berserk mode. The difference is he does not actually use the berserk on your characters, only on himself. So then he's gonna stop using Meteor Strike and instead start using his very potent regular attacks that also cannot miss, by the way, while he's berserked. So you'll actually have to tank them like that. So yeah, that's one option you can use your time for. By the way, his overdrive charges, I think, by 6% every turn, so you should have like 9 turns until he goes berserk, which unfortunately is just way too much time. It's just giving you so much time to set up all the stuff you need, right? And at that point, it's just not going to be very difficult anymore. However, you could do that, of course, but you could also just kind of like do something like with Wendigo again. It's a fight that, like Wendigo uses Berserk mechanic, and like Wendigo also has the same weaknesses where once his overdrive reaches 50%, he's going to go into that Berserk mode, right? So if you just wait until he's nearly there, and then you just try to skip his turns again with stuff like Slow plus Threaten, then yeah, you can just burst him down again easily before even seeing a second phase. That's the problem with this fight, and that's in general the problem with all of these fights that just let you, decide at your own pace when the boss is actually going to start becoming dangerous. Yeah, so assuming you have some break damage limit on your damage dealers and you can exploit his ice weakness, you should be able to just kill him before you see the second phase. By the way, if you can make his overdrive jump from 50% before he uses the fire up move, which is the berserk thing, and starts his second phase, from below 50% at least to actually 100% with threaten before he gets a move in between, which by the way shouldn't be difficult at all. In fact, it should be extremely easy. Then you might even be able to make him skip his fire up move, which would start the second phase. I've never tried this, but in theory, if his overdrive is full, he should just use Hellfire, which you can literally simply block with an Old Blaze, and then it's going to deplete his overdrive again, so he shouldn't actually enter a second phase if I'm not mistaken about how this fight works. All in all, it's a cool fight, just like Wendigo, but there are just too many ways of cheesing it for it to be all that hard. You can do the overdrive thing, probably at least again it's untested, or what is tested is you can just do the threaten thing to literally just kill him before he gets a turn in a second phase. So I cannot rank this one highly, of course. Is it harder than your Jimbo though? Your Jimbo is also pretty easy. I get like it's not that trivial to burst him down because your stats aren't that strong with this point. It's either low C or high D tier. I think I'm gonna put him in low C tier. I think lower than your Jimbo. Yeah, as I said, just too cheesable. Next up, we have got Crazy Ixion. In the first fight, Crazy Ixion is just completely harmless until he gets to his first overdrive, which is when he uses Quartet of 9999. and effectively ensures that all of his attacks from that point onward will one-shot your characters because they deal max damage basically. Unless you have break HP limit, but I'm gonna strongly assume you wouldn't have that at this point. So he's difficult to kill before he uses his first overdrive, I believe, at least if you do it in the right order. If you do this boss like second to last, like right before penance, I'm sure it's easy to burst him down before he gets his first overdrive. But if you do them in the more or less intended, no, I don't even want to say intended order, it's just the order that most people would likely do it in instinctively, then it's going to be very difficult to kill it before he gets his quartet of 9,999 off. So from that point onwards, he will actually become pretty dangerous, and you probably will have to deal with him. His main weakness, even after that point, is that you can silence him, which will get rid of his only AoE attack, which in the first fight is, I think, a Tetra Thandara or something, and then in the second fight it's Penta Thandaga or something. The Ga or Ra doesn't matter, of course, because it's going to deal max damage anyway. It's just about the number of thunders. In the first fight, you could just use Null Shock to block out most of those, and that should work. In the second fight, you'll have to do other stuff, of course, like silence him. So if you silence him, that will, of course, get rid of that. He would do that every 3 turns if you didn't silence him, so it's probably enough to set up nulls. But of course, it's just difficult to actually have your buffs running for a fight like this because characters are gonna die all the time. Whenever he's not using his magic, he's gonna physically attack on the other turns. You would also either do that or Aerospark. So yeah, he's always gonna kill off your characters, and you can't do all that much about it, so it's just difficult to sustain buffs in this fight. However, if you have enough Phoenix Stones, which they really don't cost all that much, you shouldn't be able to die to anything except for his overdrive while he's silenced, so if you just keep applying Silence Busters to him, you should be fine. The especially good thing with that is also that Waka gets a free evade and counter weapon, of course, and then especially if you have Silence Touch on your armor, it's just really good to just have Waka in for this fight because he's one of the few characters, unless you're willing to customize more evade encounters, of course, that will easily be able to stay alive in this fight. It's just Aerospark that can kill him while he's silenced, and then Waka also can obviously apply the silence. He's one of the few characters that can somewhat reliably keep up his haste in this fight as well. Um, for his second overdrive and onwards, as I said, that can be dangerous. You'll probably want to block that with a summon, which is of course very easy because he deals so much damage that he should almost immediately charge Yuno's overdrive to full when someone else gets hit by his attacks. If, however, you don't block it with a summon, you'll need Null Blaze and Null Shock on your characters to tank it, which can be, as I said, really difficult to keep up because people will constantly be dying in this fight. So I guess if you don't want to summon, it's probably best to just customize that onto your armor instead, like either SOS variants if you want to cheap out on it, or just have Lightning Eater and Fire Eater or something like that, which can also drop from some of the other bosses, by the way. So yeah, all in all, I would say the first fight's still quite easy because you can deal so much damage to him before he even gets that quartet move off that the second phase of the fight where he is actually strong is pretty short. You can also apply poison to him, so at that point you just keep him silenced, and then you just keep Phoenix downing people, and what little HP he has will eventually, relatively quickly, probably take down for the second part. However, the second fight is much harder because he starts with a full overdrive for this one, so he's gonna immediately get that quartet off. So either Lightning Proof or Lightning Eater or something like that on at least one character here, or keeping him permanently silenced are pretty much a must in this fight, in the second one. Because the Heptath and Daga, I mean, every 3 turns, like, that's just pretty much impossible to tank. You can also do auto life, of course, but as I said, again, it's just difficult to keep up that auto life. If you do that, however, with either the Lightning Proof and Lightning Eater, or you just keep him permanently silenced, the fight's just really not very difficult. You just have to watch your turns and to have enough Phoenix Downs. The reason I say watch your turns, by the way, is because he has the Energize counter when he's not hasted. Basically that can catch you off guard because you have the turn thingy, like the turn gauge on the right that you keep looking at, but then if he's not hasted for some time and then you hit him and he counters with Energize, he also has this turn delay by doing that and applies haste to himself, so he might spontaneously get more turns than you expect and then just kill you like that, so that's like the only thing that I think can actually go wrong in this fight. That is if you keep him silenced, of course. If you have auto haste, that would probably allow you to consistently actually be able to attack him, by the way, because then if you die and get revived, you still have the haste. And if you don't have auto haste, you'll probably have to deal with just not having haste in this fight for the most part, because you will keep dying all the time. And then if that happens, you'll just have to be on the defensive, I feel like, for most of the fight, because you're going to constantly just spend your turns just either applying silence to him or reviving your characters. Also, if you do have the anti-lightning equipment, that would allow you to actually just never attack because you don't have to silence him then if you never attack, he can't get haste, right? The only way he can apply haste to himself is with the energized counter. So yeah, I guess you could actually also make the fight way easier with that. You can just apply poison once and then threaten him, and then yeah, he's just not going to be hasted, which would make it way easier, I suppose. However, I would assume that's not how you're going to do it. I also wouldn't actually do it like that, to be honest. So maybe most of your damage will just have to come from poison in this fight, since you won't have many turns to attack him at all, especially when he's not silenced. You can't really attack, because if he doesn't counter with Energize because he's already hasted, then he's going to counter with Thundara, which also will just kill you, of course. But where do I rank this guy? I don't know. I mean, it's again not difficult. Like, as long as you keep him silenced and have some high agility characters out, it's kind of hard to die in this fight. However, I guess the energized thing definitely can catch you off guard. I definitely lost once or twice to that because I wasn't paying attention to that. So I think you can definitely rank this one a bit higher. It's harder than you, Jimbo. I think it's harder than Seymour 1. It's probably harder than Sin, harder than Natus. Yeah, I don't think it's. I don't know. Let's put it here. I will put it between Wendigo and Sinspawn Gui. I think this is a good place. Okay, so Shiva, she has two phases that basically just alternate. She has a water phase and an ice phase. I think she starts in the water phase, and I think she's pretty harmless in the water phase while being blinded. The problem with that is she's pretty difficult to hit even with aim because she has a crazy high luck stat, probably higher than any of your characters are gonna have. So yeah, even with 5 stacks of aim, I think you actually can't get anywhere near 100% chance of hitting her. Maybe you'll be like 70% at best. So the problem is just you can't super reliably dark bust her. However, if you have smoke bombs, that makes this fight so much easier because smoke bombs can't miss. That's because she always does her 3 regular attacks in each phase, which should just miss if you have dark on her. Although she does hit through that somewhat frequently again because of her pretty high luck stat, but it's like even if like one hit connects, it's fine. It doesn't deal that much damage, especially if she's full broken. And then yeah, she's gonna follow that up with a spell, which depends on her phase, and Hydra's Strike. In the water phase, that spell would be Penta Watera, and it's really nothing to worry about because it's just a raw spell and just 5 of them. Especially if she's broken or you have Shell, it really shouldn't be that much of an issue. And then the Hydro Strike is just easily blocked. All the Hydro attacks are water and ice elemental, and that one's even only single target. So yeah, you can just have 2 nulls and then you just block that. You probably want to have null tied anyway for the Pentawatera. Um, Even if you get hit, by the way, by the Hydro Strike, it's really not that bad. It does delay your turn by quite a bit, but it's not the end of the world, really. So yeah, I think that's pretty harmless. The water phase, the only dangerous thing in the water phase is her overdrive. It's a very strong one. It's called Tandava. And it's basically just gonna confuse everyone and can't be blocked with an Aeon because she just banishes Aeons if you summon them. It's like Seymour. Um, so you have to either have, I guess, confuse proof set up, or you have to have auto life on your characters, and then you'll be good to go pretty much, because she's gonna waste her next turn changing her phases. She has to actually use a turn for that, and she changes after her overdrive is used, basically. In the ice phase, you'll really just want to make sure you've got all the defensive things that you need against Blizzaga, and then the rest is just the same stuff, relatively easy. Again, just keep her blinded, ideally with smoke grenades. The Blizzaga is just pretty strong, so you'll probably want to stack all the Shell, Magic Break, and Null Frost to survive that one. If you do have all of that, it's probably pretty easy. The upside of being in the ice phase is Hydro Diamond Dust is super easily blocked with just 2 nulls and therefore completely useless for an overdrive. That's really bad. If you have smoke bombs to spare, I feel like this fight should be pretty easy. Otherwise, you'll need to just have 5 stacks of aim at all times, and you will need a bit of luck with hitting Dark Busters. If you miss one at a crucial time, it could cost you the fight, because her 3 attacks are super quick hits, or ultra quick hit, I think they're called. So yeah, rank 1, super fast. If she doesn't have Dark for that, you can be in big trouble, basically. Um, you might have to just play with a bit of RNG, I guess, if you don't have any smoke bombs. But I'm gonna assume most people would have smoke bombs, so I don't want to just rank it higher just because you could technically mess up the fight for yourself by using up all your smoke bombs somehow. If you do have 5 aims though, it has the upside that you could just start trying to delay busters on her with Titus and Copycat with Riku here. The delay does work on Shiva, it works really well, you just have to hit, right? It's just a bit of RNG. She doesn't take much damage from magic, I guess, and is hard to hit with physical. She has auto shell status at all times, so yeah, that's why the magic doesn't deal so much damage, and given that physical attacks have a hard time hitting her, I guess it's like not too easy to actually win this fight quickly, so you'll probably have to put up with her attacks quite a few times, I would guess. I mean, magic still deals okay damage. I think I killed her in just like 2 or maximum 3 of her phase rotations. You can again poison her, it deals quite decent damage. Again, like if you know what you're doing, it's pretty easy to manage this fight, but if your control over the fights ever does slip at any point, she can very easily just wipe you because she's immune to threaten, so that makes it harder to recover if someone dies, and she's extremely fast, especially with those ultra quick hits, so yeah, you just need to never lose control of this fight, and then if you can manage to do that, it's not very difficult. Especially if you have those smoke grenades, of course, missing a Dark Buster at a crucial time is a very good way of losing control of the fight. So where do we want to rank her here? She's for sure harder than the other Dark Aeons, right? There's no way she isn't. I think this is at least a B tier fight. I would say harder than this, also this. Seymour Flux harder. I would say she's harder than Seymour Flux, but really not by a lot. Again, if you're willing to customize like Ice Ward equipment, that would also just make this even easier. I feel like I should maybe put her a bit lower because Ice Ward is just not hard to come by at all in the end game. It's pretty cheap to make. And since, you'll have so much time until the Hepta comes out, you don't even have to start on that armor, you can just switch to it for just that one turn pretty much. So yeah, I think Shiva isn't that difficult, but still more difficult than the bulk of the bosses we've had so far. Okay, next up we have got Crazy Bahamut, which would probably be one of the harder bosses you can if you couldn't just cheese them with the slow plus threaten, which is a very lame strat, but it just works, so I have to talk about it. But if you didn't do that, the main difficulty of this fight would be his Impulse plus Heptaga turn, which happens every 3 turns starting from his second one. Again, double cast is supremely useful here because he's going to change his element at the start of every 3 turn cycle like Spheromorph does every turn, but except he won't do it every turn, right? Since he absorbs one and is weak to the opposite, one double cast would allow you to always determine which element he's set to, right? So long as you don't use 2 opposite elements, like if you use fire and ice, then you wouldn't know if it's water or thunder, but if you use like fire and water, for example, you'll always know exactly which one it is. So basically after that, once he sets his element on the second turn, he's going to use Impulse, which will fully dispel all your characters, and then he's going to use the Hepta spell of his current element. So yeah, since you won't be able to have any buffs for that one, I guess the only way to survive that is just with the appropriate elemental proof or eater gear. If you want to fight normally, I guess you won't get around customizing such equipment then, but thankfully just one character surviving should be enough so you don't have to waste too many resources. It's like with the anima thing, you just like make sure that whoever is gonna survive has low turn delay, and then Riku with haste is just gonna come back and then, switch in and resurrect everyone basically. If you don't want to do that, of course, slow and threaten does work, as I said, it just works way too well. Way better than it has any business of working out. You can just skip pretty much the entire boss fight if your damage is high enough, but you may actually have to hit a second threaten if it's not, because this 800,000 HP is quite difficult to chew through in just one threaten with his gravity immunity. If you could use just Demi again, it wouldn't be a problem at all, but for this fight you actually can't use Demi, so yeah, you'll actually have to have a decent offensive stat lineup here with either strength or magic. But still, even if you have to hit a second threaten, a 50% chance to win before he gets to do anything at all is just too good to rank this boss very highly, I feel like. Um, Maybe without threaten, I would also put this one in A tier. With threaten, it's a harder threaten. You might have to hit too, like so. I have to rank it before higher than Ifrit, I feel like, and higher than Yojimbo. Let's put it maybe. I think it's easier than Ixion though. Because like Ixion you can't threaten. I mean you can threaten Ixion, but he has break threaten, so you can't deal damage during threaten. I think it's like right below Ixion, let's put it here. So Crazy Yojimbo is a very well designed fight that gets rid of most of the ridiculous glaring weaknesses that regular Yojimbo has. You can still attack it and threaten, but that's only until the overdrive fills up, at which point he will counter the next attack with break threaten. Also, he will counter any attacks against him even when he's not in threaten while his overdrive is full, forcing you to actually let him get some turns, which wasn't the case with the regular Yojimbo. Remember when I said he has a dangerous move, but you don't really have to see it very much because he has such a low HP bar, which is also true for Dark Yojimbo, but like with Dark Yojimbo, you can't attack him all that much, right? For the first fight, you get to attack him 3 times before his overdrive is full, and you have to do that or you'll lose to Zanmato again. But once those 3 attacks have been dealt, you can't attack him anymore unless you're willing to deal with his counter, basically. So he is actually going to get some turns, and he's going to show you his dangerous moves. At the very least, though, Wakizashi is only used as a counter anymore, so you won't use it normally against you. It's been replaced by Dokuzashi in this fight, which seems to deal less damage in my experience, but that could also just be because of my stats, I'm not actually sure. Anyway, once you have gotten him full broken and set up your protects, he really doesn't deal all that much damage anymore, so that takes a bit away from the difficulty. The dog can dispel you and steal your MP in the second fight, which is pretty annoying, but he always does that to the highest MP character, and it's very possible to plan around this, and in the other 2 fights the dog really isn't much of a problem, just doesn't do all that much at all. The only thing that makes me want to rank this higher than most of the fights so far is just that the first fight is always an ambush. That can be difficult to deal with, so either you have Titus with his first strike weapon in and you immediately switch to Orin and threaten this guy, right? You can do that and then set up your defensive buffs basically for his first turn. But if you do that, you will have to forego the ability to use your threaten both offensively later, or at least reliably. It's going to become a 50% chance at that point. You'll forego the ability to basically use it offensively later, which is immensely useful, for example, for full breaking him, basically, because that's got so much turn delay that really in a threaten is the perfect time to use full break. And also, if you do ever find yourself in trouble, you won't be able to use the threaten reliably to get out of that situation anymore by just threatening him, then using that time to heal up, basically. Yeah, so that ambush actually makes it way harder. I think the later fights are actually meant to be more difficult since you go from hitting 3 hits on him between turns to 4 and then 5, but it really just gets easier in my experience since those fights aren't ambushes anymore and you need to let him actually have fewer turns because you get to attack him more. I suppose depending on whether you're running a swift high agility party like I was or a slower but more powerful one, it should vary a lot whether or not whether or not being able to attack it more or having to attack it more is actually the bigger evil. For me it was obviously the former, but maybe if you have a slow party, I guess the later fights could be more difficult because you have to hit him more times, so yeah, maybe if it's like difficult for you to get those 5 hits out, right? For me, it just wasn't. For me, the bigger difficulty was actually surviving his attacks and that I couldn't attack him more times before I need to let him have a turn again, basically. Yes, but just because of the first fight, I think I have to rank this pretty highly because he still deals decently high damage. Like, he's not going to just one-shot you in one attack if you full break him and stuff, but it's still pretty bad, to be honest. The ambush makes it so much harder to deal with the first fight. I have to at least put it on top of B, maybe even low A tier. I think he also has decent luck and evasion, by the way, so you can't super reliably hit him, which also should make it a little bit more difficult. But even if you miss, it still charges as overdrive, so I guess it doesn't really matter all that much, to be honest. His defenses are again pretty weak, like with the regular Jimbo. I'm not really sure whether to put him at the top of B or like lower than Valifor in A. It's one of the two. For now, I think I'm going to do like high A tier. Let's go with that. Actually, no, that's too high. That's too high. Let's go with like let's go with very high B tier. So next up we have Crazy Anima. I feel like this is actually one of the easiest Dark Aeon fights or Crazy Aeon fights, unfortunately. The status mirror is a cool mechanic, but making a boss vulnerable to basically every ailment is just not going to make for a very difficult fight. So if you forgot how this works, it's if you, I mean, he's basically like vulnerable to pretty much any ailment that doesn't just immediately kill him, right? But if you apply something to him, it's also going to get applied to you. So you can only have the same statuses that Anima has. That goes for both buffs and debuffs. So you pretty much just pick whether you want to do physical or magical damage, I guess, and then simply apply the buffs and debuffs that diminish the other damage type. Just apply them to both of you, but you won't care all that much about it. I heavily do recommend using magic here and then applying power break and protect to everyone because Demis just works wonders against this 2.5 million HP. Actually, it's closer to 2.6 million, I think. Reflect also fully protects you against all of its magic except the single target Holy, and Holy will kill you if you don't go for Magic Break and Shell, but given that all your statuses are always synchronized to his, dying and getting revived doesn't actually mean much, like unlike in most other fights where if you die, you'll have to waste a bunch of turns not only reviving, but also like setting up haste and protect and shell and all that stuff. You don't have to do that here because you just always have the same statuses that Anima has. So yeah, dying is really not so bad. For the same reason I also wouldn't go for Death Proof to survive pain, just revive the character if they die. Um, Ideally, you would want to just revive with like an alchemy character so you have higher HP because he can deal some AoE damage. But yeah, I mean, again, that's like the biggest problem with this fight. Just his single target stuff can actually kill you, but most of the stuff doesn't, right? Uh, Also, you'd probably be tempted to go for poison or zombie plus regen strategies here, but I just really wouldn't do that. Yes, it deals a lot of damage to him, but Demi also deals a lot of damage to him, so you don't really need it. And I just find it unnecessarily bothersome to have to deal with all that on my own characters personally. His overdrive is just non-lethal here, which is honestly a joke in my opinion. If you just made that one change where his overdrive can actually kill you, this fight would immediately shift from like being pretty easy to being quite difficult, probably the hardest one so far. Um, yeah, if he drops below 50% HP, he uses Mega Doom on himself. His own Doom counter, however, will be much higher than yours. For you, it's always going to be 5 at best, so your characters are going to have to die at least every 5 turns, but again, that's not that much of a problem. Just like with Unalesca, all you have to do is manipulate your turns and then switch the characters so that only one character dies at a time, then you just revive them and everything is fine. Most of his attacks are single target, so it's just not dangerous at all, and the only AoE attacks he has are his gas spells, which, Reflect gets rid of them completely, and the physical attack, which you have Power Break and Protect for, so it doesn't deal much damage, as well as Mega Graviton, and Mega Graviton, like, is, gravity based, so it can't actually kill you if you just keep your HP somewhat high. The best way of doing that, as I said, is when characters die, just revive them with Alchemy, so yeah. As long as you just do that, you can't really lose in this fight. I feel like there's just nothing that can actually kill you if you're not completely stupid and totally forget to heal for some reason. Yeah, I feel like it's all his AoE moves, they just deal like 3000 damage at best, and that's just nothing. Absolutely nothing. And the single target ones you just revive for, so this is like a D tier fight. I think it's easier than Omega even, Ultima, sorry, even. Is it harder than this flag? I don't know. I think Nuzlocke is harder, yeah. I think it's harder than Spheromorph, but that's all. Next up, Crazy Mega Sisters. This fight can be pretty easy or pretty hard depending on whether we have enough consumable silence and sleep grenades. If you do, I think the fight isn't difficult at all. Cindy is just totally harmless and she's gonna spend 80% of her turns simply cleansing the other sisters of their debuffs. And whenever she doesn't do that, she only uses like Aquamazade, I think it's called, and that just drains your MP. It barely even deals any damage. Sandy will literally never get a single turn. I mean that quite literally, because if you just have one decently fast character with the means to apply sleep, ideally Riku with Dream Powder, she's not immune to it, so she will simply never ever get a turn. I don't know why you would design it this way. I don't even know what Sandy does. I swear I have no idea because she's never gotten a turn in any of my playthroughs. Um, So Cindy will cleanse the sleep every 2 or 3 turns or so, but that's okay because you just reapply it, and Riku should be much faster with the use command than Cindy anyway, so it's actually good for you if Cindy wastes her turns doing that. So that's definitely not an issue. Their HP is also pretty low, so you won't even need that many of these consumables. Minty is the only one that can actually deal damage, or let's say halfway noteworthy damage if you don't count like the 2000 damage from Aquamazade or something that you can just shrug off. However, she only has single target attacks aside from her overdrive, which she should never get because her measly 300,000 HP will be blown through in no time at this point in the game if you don't do this fight really early. You can also silence Mindy to remove her magic attacks, which are the only ones that actually deal significant damage. However, she will use physical attacks with a bunch of annoying statuses instead, so it might actually just be better to forego the silence and instead apply Null Frost and Null Shock, since those are the only elements she can use, and then you'll be safe as well. All in all, it just makes for an extremely easy fight, given that you have these dream powders and stuff. Also, the means to kill Mindy before she fills her overdrive, because if she does get that overdrive, that is actually really annoying. I think it's Terra Graviton or something, so you'll need shells to even survive that, and then it also gives you a bunch of statuses, including Doom. It's just super annoying. Just don't do it. So if you kill Mindy before she gets her overdrive, which you should be able to, as I said, quite easily, then Cindy is also going to revive her, I guess, every now and then, but only with just a little bit of HP, so should be able to just kill her again immediately and then get to damaging the others. Also, if Cindy gets her overdrive, she's going to use some kind of master elixir or something, which also revives Mindy again, but again with just not all that much HP. You just kill her again and just keep doing that until they're dead, I guess. If, however, you don't have these sleep powders and you have to rely on Sleep Buster instead, which could happen because, like, those sleep and silence grenades, I do believe they're actually used for some relatively useful customization. So if you just wanted to make those and you just don't have enough of them left, I guess the fight could get way more difficult. Since Waka is pretty slow and you likely won't want to give someone else Sleep Buster just for this one fight because it's not very useful for other fights, you will actually have to lose a decent number of turns, I guess, to just keep Sandy asleep at all times. However, it's still totally manageable, especially if you invested in Waka to raise his agility a little, but even if you didn't, it should just be fine. To be honest, this fight is just kind of a joke. I really expected this to be much harder. It's just so stupid that Sandy like to sleep. I don't know, why can you just make her sleep literally 24/7? Maybe she should have like a sleep-proof FI or something, I don't know, but then I guess it would be maybe difficult. I don't know. Finally, just make sure to have an Aeon ready, I guess, when you kill Cindy, because her first step is going to trigger the auto life that she has from the start of the battle, and make the sisters use their Delta attack once before effectively ending the fight if you're still alive by then. Yeah, also, if Yuna has the use command, which she should, in my opinion, I think that's the single biggest mistake you can make on the sphere grids, to not spend those extra couple level ups on Yuna to get use. Giving her Tactician with that double overdrive weapon will probably charge her overdrive at a very fast pace, while also applying the necessary debuffs you want anyway, so yeah, that's probably a pretty good way of getting that overdrive. It's like killing two birds with one stone, so yeah, you'll just get that anyway. Um, I don't know really where to rank this. I think this is another D tier, to be honest. But how D tier is like Ultima weapon? Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same as Ultima weapon. It's like here. Let's put it here. Guess we only have a couple left. Let's finally do Geoscano here. And depending on when you do this fight, it can be much harder or easier. As I said, I think the game kind of intends you to do this at some point. That's just at any point, like between the Dark Aeon fights. So yeah, again, just if you have break damage limit with Tidus, basically it's gonna be way easier because he's weak to all elements but except for water. So if you can exploit 3 of his weaknesses basically with break damage limit, you can just deal immense damage to him even with a low strength stat. And for a post-game super boss, making a cheap weapon with a couple of elemental strikes is just a very low price to pay to be able to completely wipe the floor with it, making this boss not very difficult in my opinion. Um, The only thing you have to look out for here is that you'll need a way to survive his stone punches, which he's gonna use always on his first 3 turns, one for each character basically. Titus always gets a stone-proof armor in the Sin area, and Waka can just use his evade and counter that he gets before the Altana fight, so you'll just have to make something for Riku unless you wanna just pray that she dodges the attack. I wouldn't recommend that. Yeah, just give her some kind of like stone proof or whatever. Or yeah, just Riku simply needs as a way to not die to that stone punch, and then the fight is completely trivial. Yeah, this has like something like a status mirror as well. He's gonna swallow one of your characters and then copy their statuses, so you just want to apply debuffs to them, of course. Once you apply slow, full break, and darkness to GL's Gano, ideally through Waka, I would say the fight is essentially over already. Yeah, full break, by the way, I would give it to Riku. I don't consider that much of an investment because I think teaching Riku full break is amazing anyway. There are so many enemies that you want full break for, and Riku is just the fastest one. She also just doesn't always have something to do, so being able to full break is a great option with Riku. Even if you don't teach Riku full break, just having armor break on someone, which I think Waka can actually naturally learn from his sphere grid if you just use one of these key spheres on him, would probably suffice too. I think you do need armor break on him though. I mean, okay, you don't strictly need it, but I would recommend you have armor break because he barely takes any damage otherwise. I just full break him because I always give my Riku full break anyway. So yeah, once you have those debuffs, it's yeah just like literally a couple attacks from Titus will probably simply kill him. So if Titus can't break the damage limit, I guess it's probably still very doable. Though you'll just I would imagine have to throw some of these gems that you get with Riku, like the Shadow Gem, the Blessed Gem, the Supreme Gems, that kind of stuff, just to make up for his lacking damage. But yeah, this is definitely not a difficult fight at all. It's probably another D tier here. I don't really know. I feel like it's hard. No, it's easier than Chocobo Eater, isn't it? Maybe here. I think it's harder probably than the crawler. Yeah, let's do it like that. Crazy Ochu. Crazy Ochu has some devastating attacks, but he gives you so much time to address them that it's not really an issue. And by that I mean he's just really slow. In my opinion, Crazy Ochu is actually one of the easier post-game bosses and should be done like soon after Braska's final Aeon to get that first break damage limit armor and make everything else just much easier. For me, I already said I did this guy literally before even doing the Cavern of Stone and Faith, so before the very first Ujimbo fight, it's just not an issue, you know? He has a Hepta Water God turn, but the problem is he isn't immune to silence, so you never even have to see this move. And then next, he just uses a regular claw attack, which shouldn't hit you with darkness, so that's also not a problem. Then he just pretty much repeats these two harmless moves alternatingly the entire fight, but he does use one way more dangerous move in between each such cycle of Hepta Water God Claw. First, he will use Ochu Dance, so it's Hepta Water God Claw, and then Ochu Dance, and then Hepta Water God Claw, and then Slime is the next special move, and then he also alternates between these two special moves, basically. Ochu Dance will give you a bunch of statuses again, but deal no damage, so you can simply either ignore it with the right armor if you want to customize, or you'll have to summon an Aeon. Technically, Auto Life is also an option, especially if you do the fight early, which you should, in my opinion. It's gonna take a while because he's immune to poison, so I think that would probably consume too much MP. Funnily enough, if you do it really early, you probably also, if you do the summoning Aeon things, which I obviously had to do because I couldn't customize, he's probably going to get like more of these special turns than you have Aeons, funnily enough, so you kind of can't even use the Aeon overdrives here to deal with that little bit of extra damage to him. I had to literally just summon these Aeons and then use the shield for the Ochu dance turn, then dismiss them again, so I have the Aeon still, because I would have run out of Aeons otherwise. Anyway, his claw attack is so strong that Yuna should immediately get her overdrive with the double OD weapon if anyone else gets hit by it, basically. He does counter everything with claw, so I personally like to get hit on purpose once between each special move to just automatically get Yuna's overdrive before reapplying darkness. That's probably the easiest way of always having an Aeon ready for these special moves, even if it is going to cost you some Phoenix Downs throughout the course of the fight, which again doesn't really mean much. It's 200 gil per Phoenix Down, you should have that. Losing haste also just isn't a big deal when you die because this boss is pretty slow himself, as I said, so you don't really need it. Just make sure not to attack it more than 4 times or deal more than 99,998 damage between its turns, otherwise it's gonna counter with a much more scary move. I think it's called Panic Jump that you don't want to see at all. I think it just deals a lot of damage, yeah. I mean, you're not in any rush, just don't attack him, right? You also have the option of actually zombifying your own characters because he only uses his regular claw counter against non-zombies for some reason. I don't really know why. But personally, I think that's just not necessary at all because Darkbuster will do the job just fine. Just use Darkbuster and the claw attack is relevant because he's never going to hit it pretty much. So where do we rank this guy? I guess if you do it without customizing the necessary armor, you would have to manage the darkness turns a little bit so you can always fill Yuna's overdrive between the special moves, because I can't think of any kind of other overdrive mode that would be able to charge her overdrive so quickly. That's a little bit of difficulty added to the fight, I suppose. It's just not very difficult to do that though. Like, is it so hard to get hit, sorry, once every 3 turns and then reapply the darkness buster? I don't think so. It's like maybe a C tier fight. It's definitely not D tier. Like, it's not super trivial. Um, I mean, maybe it is though. Actually, let's put it to top of D tier. It's maybe more like a knowledge check fight anyway. Like with Unalesca, I just have to know what you can do to trivialize the fight. You literally don't have to take any damage for this entire fight except this claw counters that you proc on purpose to get Yuna's overdrive. Next up, we have got Ultima. No, sorry, Omega Weapon. We already did Ultima. So Omega behaves very similarly to Ultima, actually pretty much just like Ultima. However, he is immune to the statuses that trivialize the Ultima fight and has much better stats. So unlike Ultima, whose stats are so bad that he becomes literally useless after a full break, Omega, who also has no way of getting rid of that full break, at least himself, just feels like he's at normal strength with the full break and abnormally strong without. And given that you can neither silence nor blind him, you actually have to get hit by both his physical and magical attacks this time, not only the special ones. And speaking of the special ones, Hyper Spark is now Master Spark and actually deals really high damage to the point where you'll probably get wiped if you're not at full HP for it. The other two do still work in the exact same way though, with core energy still doing literally nothing, and yeah, stone breath, you just deal with it in the same way. You have to just watch your turn economy a bit more with the stone breath, so it's just like since his follow-up attack, whatever comes after that actually deals damage, now you have to be a bit faster with reapplying your defensive buffs after you get rid of the petrification, or just, to make more petrify proof or stone proof armor. I guess it also works. Not exactly that expensive, I feel like, to do that. I think you just need softs, which are pretty cheap, of course. His magic or his magic turns are arguably like the most threatening parts of this fight. Because you kind of have the option of either making him use haste on himself, casting Tetra Flare on you, or using Ultima, basically depending on who you give reflect statuses to. I don't want to get too much into that, but you can basically manipulate which spell he's going to use, depending on which one you want. However, both aren't great, of course, because if you opt for the haste, then you'll have to dispel him again, which means that you do need to reapply the full break in order to survive, and full break has a lot of delay and costs a lot of MP. The spells that he can use being Tetraflare or Ultima, they are tankable with Shell and Full Break on him, but given the non-elemental damage, it's just not possible to deal with them quite as comfortably or reliably as with Seymour's spells, for instance. I mean, if someone gets hit by 3 Tetraflare, like 3 out of the 4 Tetraflares, they will probably die, because you can't block with the nulls. Also, Nova will deal 9,999 damage this time, so stamina tablets don't work anymore unless you use them in combination with break HP limit. So you're really going to want that Aeon this time, given that auto life could also be dangerous here, since you just might die to his next move if you can't apply, your defensive buffs in time, because it will actually deal damage, unlike with Ultimate Weapon, unless it's core energy, in which case it's going to do nothing, yes. But even though I have made him sound pretty strong so far, he is perfectly predictable. There is no randomness at all to his algorithm. which kind of just never really makes for a hard fight, unfortunately. All of his attacks are still reliably survivable, even if you need to actually put in some effort into upkeeping your defenses. Like, you'll probably die to the physical one if you don't have Protect and Full Break, and you'll probably die to the magical one if you don't have Shell and Full Break. Unlike with Ultima, where you can just do nothing and still always survive. Uh, yeah, always knowing what's coming in combination with his attacks, not needing too much preparation, like multiple turns before that, since the full break does stick for a very long time, does make it easy enough to ensure that you have everything you need at all times to survive. So all in all, I wouldn't actually say that Omega is that difficult. He's kind of just like Ultima weapon if Ultima wasn't a complete joke, you know? And with this one too, I'm happy it's not that hard because you do have to go through that gauntlet of annoying random encounters again to get here, and you don't get healed in between fights like with Ultima Weapon. So, where do we want to put him? I mean, he's definitely not D tier. I think he's for sure harder than Avery as well. It has to be B tier somewhere. It's not A, it's definitely not A. It started in Spectral Keeper, is it? Yeah, I think it started in Shiva. Harder than Omnis? I think not, actually. I think it's here. This is a good place for him. I wonder if I overrated Seymour Flux, though. I feel like he's maybe not actually that difficult. Anyway, so yeah, okay, as you can see, we have got these three remaining. I kinda don't know which one I want to use for Remium Temple. This is the picture of Remium Temple's front door, and this is Belgemine, or whatever her name is, Belgemine, I don't know. In the Remium thing here, I did add both initially because I considered ranking the other Bilgemine fights as well that you have all throughout Spira, not just the one in Remium Temple, but I feel like that's like not really very interesting. They're all very easy, so we'll just do the Remium Temple fights. I think I'm gonna use this one to represent her. And this one, I found out, depends very strongly on when you do this. Basically, the first time I played this mod, I did this pretty early without defeating most of the crazy Aeons first. I was way lower level, and with those lower stats, it was actually quite the challenge, like at least B tier, I would say, probably even A tier. However, then in my more recent run, I did this at the very end, right before Seraph, and it was super easy, like trivially easy. It's a total joke. Like, this is E tier, actually, I think. I can't think of a single fight that was even remotely difficult, really. It's so easy. It's really like Isaru again. It's just a bunch of fights that have just one stupid gimmick, and once you figure them out, it's pretty much unlosable. You don't have to make any micro optimizations or anything. We'll put it at the top of E tier, I guess. I did remember when I said this was the top of E tier. Anything slightly more difficult would be D. Yeah, now we have two more in E tier, but whatever. Okay, now let's finally get to Seraph, the most grand and dangerous boss for sure. Without any doubt, Seraph is certainly the hardest boss in the game. There's zero doubt about that. Seraph is the only boss that has so many threats on you that you literally won't have enough slots to customize your way out of every single one. Like with almost every single one of these bosses, if you're willing to just really go all out, like go full crazy with customizing specifically to counter them, you can make them really easy. Seraph is the only one where you can't even get close to doing that. You have to just deal with him, and he's gonna be really strong no matter what you do. He also constantly uses very strong physical and magical attacks that will require you to waste way more turns on your defenses, as compared to most other bosses that require only Protect or only Shell. And if you thought that just Protect or Shell, or I mean both, I guess, is good enough, that's probably also wrong because you almost definitely want 5 stacks of Cheer and Focus for this fight as well if you want to reliably survive everything. I mean, Seraph and both of his arms have a multitude of extremely dangerous AoE attacks that deal so much damage that just ignoring them, like to simply revive characters after they die, is not even close to being an option. And if anyone ever does die, you better have those auto abilities because Seraph does not give you any time to breathe, and you'll feel like you just need every last turn you can get for purposes other than reapplying these buffs for the character that just died. Also, not to mention that Cheer and Focus will require you to set it up with Riku's mix, since, you definitely won't have the time to use Cheer or Focus in this fight, like, not even in your wildest fevered dreams. And yeah, mix obviously delays Riku by quite a bit and requires an overdrive. As if his overwhelming damage wasn't bad enough, though, in combination with his arms, he also has the ability to inflict pretty much every single negative status effect in the game onto you, including extremely debilitating ones like Full Break or stuff like Berserk, that literally just takes your character completely out of commission until you cure it. Not even Ribbon will protect you against all of his stuff, like, and even then, not everyone can get a Ribbon anyway. Again, having to constantly dispel your own characters to get rid of their full breaks or even just like more niche single breaks means you better have at least a few auto abilities on your characters because you likely won't have time to manually reapply everything you need. In his second phase, he loses some of his AoE attacks, though in favor of Eye of God, which will always deal 9,999 damage to a character and is pretty much a death sentence. Ideally, you would want to make it through the entire fight without your characters ever dying because of how terribly difficult it is to find the time to buff them back up in a fight as fast-paced as this. And for that purpose, you're probably going to want break HP limit. At least it can be very useful, but it's not useful at all in most other fights. So you have to choose between making your gear tailored specifically for winning this one fight or being able to have good equipment against all other bosses in the game. So it's pretty likely that many players at this point would have already started customizing some stronger equipment for some of the other fights, just assuming it's going to be like good general purpose equipment. But then for Seraph, it's just like not good because now you don't have break HP limit, for example, and it's fine. Like you can win without break HP limit. I have already done it, but yeah, it's not great. And that's also, by the way, only if you have the foresight to not use your limited supply of curtains and chocobo wings for anything else anyway, right? As I just said. Furthermore, while Seraph itself is easily predictable, the arms have actually highly randomized algorithms, making it impossible to specifically prepare for any of their super dangerous moves. Not only can the arms deal very significant damage as well, but they can literally do that while also applying really bad statuses onto you, such as the breaks, for example. However, the biggest problem with the arms is that they just constantly heal, cleanse, and buff all the enemies in the fight, including Seraph. This means you constantly have to waste turns dispelling their mighty guards one by one and reapplying whatever breaks you need to deal damage through their solid defensive stats. And as if any of that wasn't enough, the fight is also kind of a race against time in some ways. So the way it works is, given that Seraph himself is very predictable, it's not too difficult to deal with him while the arms are dead, so you'd think you can simply ignore dealing damage to Seraph and keep rushing to kill the arms as soon as possible every time to make the fight more manageable. But there's also a problem with that, because Corypheon really thought of everything in this fight. Each time Seraph regenerates his arms, he increases the charge rate for his overdrive Judgment Day, which will obviously immediately end the fight if you get hit by it, and by you I mean your character is not an Aeon. Aeons can't block it. And yeah, the only realistic way to survive that is just either by blocking it with an Aeon, which you only have so many of, or killing the arms to just make his overdrive gauge temporarily go down again. Also, the arms will keep using Mighty Guard and White Wind each time they respawn, so you have to carefully balance killing the arms with damaging Seraph. On one hand, you do want to kill Seraph with as few deaths of the arms as possible, because each time you kill the arms, that introduces added difficulty to the fight, and on the other hand, the arms are so incredibly dangerous that you'd want them to be dead at all times. So unlike with most bosses, I couldn't even begin to tell you what the optimal strategy here is. There are so many different things to consider, and depending on your setup, your fight will look vastly different from someone else's. But they all have one thing in common: this fight is just absolutely brutal. You have to really know what you're doing for a chance of victory against Seraph, and so I think nobody would disagree. I'm just gonna put this one in S tier. There's just no way this doesn't deserve to be the sole boss in S tier. There's nothing else that even comes close to being as difficult as Seraph. So yeah, that was I think my tier list. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, maybe also check out the Seraph fight that I may or may not upload in my no customization run. Okay, see you next time.